Recording in progress.
Casa de Noche Buena, 14. Christ Child Society, 49. Fire and Comfort, 4. Natividad, 150 incubator quilts. So every preemie baby born in this county gets an incubator cover and they get to keep it. So Salinas Valley Memorial got 100, Natividad got 150, and Chomp got 40. The heart and breast cancer patients, everybody gets a We do quilt
Recording in
pillows for
progress.
anybody getting catheters, 190. We have lavender eye pillows. We've made 90 of those. Hospice got 60 wheelchair covers and 20 eye pillows. That's a whopping, in 1 year, 930 quilted items. When Paradise Fires happened, all of the local quilt guilds along the California coast sent every family 3 quilts. Every family in Paradise Fire. In the Altadena fire, we put out a call for quilts 2 weeks ago, and just our guild alone just drove down 77 quilts to the Altadena fire. Our donations are made possible through the dedication and support of our generous, creative, and caring Quilt Guild members. We do it all voluntarily, and quilts are not cheap to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's awesome.
Good evening. My name is Susan Golbeck. I'm a longtime resident of Pacific Grove. I'm also considered to be the queen bee of the BBB, which is the Bring Butterflies Back Citizen Outreach Committee. And as the city council members and the mayor know, the butterfly stained glass window is on its way to being considered to be brought back to the city of Pacific Grove. And we all are very happy about that. The BBB has talked to over 350 citizens in Pacific Grove, and believe me, they're really enthusiastic about this project. I come here tonight to ask you one thing, and that is the city manager has told us that he really can't do much of anything until this matter is put on the agenda to have a planning meeting. For example, Mr. Aga, who's giving this gift to the city, cannot really commit to his desire to pay for the installation of the butterflies if he doesn't know what the amount is. So I urge you tonight to put this on the agenda at the earliest possible time, simply to plan the way forward. And the reason for that is because we need to know how much the installation is going to be. We need to know whether or not the city manager has asked us to choose a location, which we have at the museum. I've served you all with this report, but we don't even know if it fits yet because no one has measured it. We want to get Del Monte Glass out there to measure it and to let us know what is involved in this, how much downtime there will be, those kinds of things. And I really urge you to put it on the agenda as soon as possible. There doesn't need to be a staff report. We just need to plan the way forward. Where are we going? What are we going to do? And the number one thing is, does it fit in the museum? Number two, is this something we want to go forward with there? And whether or not Mr. Aga wants to go forward, because he needs to know how much the cost is going to be for him to pay for installation. I don't think that's too much to ask. And I tell you all, as elected official, the public is really behind this. Thank you. I paid for the first time. I've done less than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Well done. Well done. I think we'll have one more here and then we'll check outside.
Thank you. Colleen Ingram, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a PG resident. I just wanted to come up and publicly thank Councilmember Garfield for her unwavering commitment to suspend the PG Cares project until information is provided regarding a memorandum of understanding. This item was posted as a new item and was full of contradictions. Great stuff, but contradictions. Councilmember Garfield has had every right to pull this for clarity. And regardless as to whether she spoke to staff about it or not, it was the right that we have as council members and the public to pull consent agenda items. She's also been integral in a part of an established group of volunteers at Perkins Park. That inspired the city to create the volunteer program that we have today. That's something that the city of Carmel doesn't have, that PG Cares sort of fills that gap and works with the city. Friends of Perkins Park has also been established to offer financial assistance for the city to work with the landscaping services with city approval and oversight. So this is the prototype that we should probably be using forward if we're working with philanthropic volunteers and the city volunteer program that's established with Amy Colony as the volunteer coordinator. I wondered if any of the PG Cares founders had volunteered through this program that we have, and I asked and they haven't, not the founders. So when this project comes forward to the council again, I'd like to urge the council and staff to consider working within the frameworks that we have already established within the city. Donations and projects are welcome by the city, like Chase Park was done. Chautauqua Hall is trying to get funds. The Moongate Pavilion is raising funds, and we're always looking for volunteers. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anyone online?
I see no hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close general public comment, bring it back to the council. We're now at the consent agenda. This is the deals with routine and non-controversial items. And at this time, I'll ask if anyone would like to pull an item off the consent agenda. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to approve consent.
Motion to approve consent.
Um,
Oh, wait.
I asked everyone whether they wanted to pull an item. So,
Do you have?
no, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and,
Excuse me, Mayor, maybe I missed it. I didn't hear you ask the public. if-
I asked if everyone, I meant intended to have the public be a part of everyone, but go ahead and check online.
So, yes, there's no hands raised. I,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Go, and we have a motion to approve consent?
yes, a motion to approve consent.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call vote on this since Mr. Paduri's online.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmember Rao. Aye. Councilmembers Garfield. McDonald. Walking Stick.
Aye.
Paduri. Was that aye? Councilmember Paduri? Okay, we don't hear you, sir. Okay.
Yeah, I saw his lips say aye.
Mayor Smith?
Aye. Maybe we can put a thumbs up for now until he figures out the
Right.
sound issue.
Councilmember Paduri, can you put a thumbs up if that was an aye? I believe it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
Motion
Okay.
carries 7-0.
I think that's a 7-0. Okay, on the consent agenda, so we'll go ahead and move on to the regular agenda here. We're going to the main item of the night here, the redistricting 11A, fourth public hearing to establish district boundaries to transition from an at-large election system to a district-based election system. This item is set for 6:15, so we are about 11 minutes behind that, but we're doing well here. And I will recognize staff to take us through the initial part of this. So we're going to actually end up having two parts to this item. It's basically a bifurcated item. It's going to be, first, we're going to talk about the maps and select, and then we're going to talk about the sequencing. So there will be two opportunities for public comment, one after the map presentations, and then there'll be another opportunity for public comment for the sequencing presentation. So at this time, and it'll be fully bifurcated. So at this time, I will recognize our consultant in order to go over the maps issue.
Hey, good evening again, everybody. And those who have not been to the previous public hearings. This started back in November, actually quite earlier than that, but we held two public hearings in November and December respectively. Those particular public hearings were held to gather information from the community with respect to the composition of maps and also to educate the community on the composition of maps. We then also had a public forum where we went over the same process or the same things that we did on the first two public hearings. In addition, we talked about the mapping tools. So the public could engage in submitting drafts for council to consider. And we did have a number of those all the way up until the February 24th deadline for this particular meeting. The next two hearings were February 5th and March 5th, respectively. And those were public hearings where council and the public were able to see draft maps and have discussion and give direction, et cetera. And so we are here on the March 5th public hearing. The intention here, as Mayor said, is to select a map for consideration or for the future of Pacific Grove, and also to talk about election sequencing. Before anybody asks, no council member will lose their particular seat that they were elected for. They will finish their respective terms, whether it finishes in 2026 or 2028. We will move to district elections beginning of the election cycle of 2026. In addition, I'm talking to you tonight about draft plans that have been submitted to council. Those plans were based on the 2020 census. We will go over this again after the 2030 census as what we call redistricting. So we'll likely be back. Hopefully they'll use National Demographics Corporation again in 2031. But in order to create these maps, it's not just a matter of taking a pencil and saying this looks like a good spot to create a voting or election district. We must use census blocks. And I like to say census blocks are like sunflowers. That's a good one. Snowflakes. And not all of them are really created equally in shape, size, the number of folks that might live in census blocks. In fact, there are a number of census blocks in Pacific Grove that have 0 residents in them. So it's really a unique challenge. And then I'm going to go over the reason why I'm mentioning all this stuff now, because the first thing that we must try to do is to create 6 districts of equal population. The council is trying to create 6 districts and then have an at-large mayor. So there'll still be 7 council members, one of which would be an at-large mayor. So 6 districts of equal population. And what that means is, and based on the 2020 census, there were 15,125 residents during that census when that data were gathered, which means that each of the 6 districts, ideally, if you're looking at truly equal population, would be 2,521 people. I say that because it's very difficult to do. So the courts have allowed up to a 10% deviation or variance. You'll hear me say in those terms interchangeably through the night. They're basically the same thing. And so that's the goal here. We also must follow the Federal Voting Rights Act and have no racial gerrymandering in this process. Then we shift to California. And then in a prioritized order, these districts, these 6 districts must be geographically contiguous. And there should be no breaks in the lines. We want to avoid division of neighborhoods and communities of interest. And again, keep in mind that we're creating districts of just 2,521. Some neighborhoods are larger than that. So there are going to be some neighborhoods that might be divided in some of these samples or candidates plans. We want to have easily identifiable boundaries. Usually those are kind of the major roads you might see in the city, other things like parks. And we want our districts to be compact. We don't want to bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And here's the second part of this, and especially when it comes to sequencing, we shall not adopt election district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent political candidate or political party. There'll be more about that when we get to sequencing. So for tonight, and previously rather, we had 20 maps that were submitted for the February 5th hearing. Now, if you're really quick with math, mathematics, you'll see that there are not 20 maps there. There's 18. 2 of those maps that were submitted for the February 5th hearing were not contiguous. So if we go back to the prioritization of the California criteria, geographically contiguous is number 1. 2 of them were disqualified because they were not contiguous, okay? So you see 18 there. At that particular public hearing, after all the comments and discussion and dialogue, council came up with 6 what we call focused maps. And those are just my terms. And those are the maps 101, 108, 109, 116, 118, 119. And in the interim, another map came in from the community and they met the deadline target, and that is map 121. So I'm going to go through each of the maps and give some highlights, and I'll be talking about what their variance or deviation is, but I also will point out some particular percentages that talk about citizen voting age population. So the citizen voting age population really means individuals who are 18 or over. They might be registered to vote or they are registered voters, but that's what citizen voting age population means. And if I slip up and say CVAP, it's the same thing. So the first one we're going to talk about is map 101. And you're going to see on every single one of these plans a proposed sequencing. They're all the same. And you can see the asterisk there. It says final sequencing will be decided once a map is selected in a few minutes. So map 101, the goal was to attempt to follow the Pacific Grove Unified School District boundary or trustee area lines. I helped facilitate that process. And the reason I want to stop here a little bit is because PGUSD geographic area is larger than the city limits. So you can't just perfectly align the trustee areas with these proposed districts. So we attempted to follow them via Carmel Avenue, Lighthouse Avenue, Walnut Street. And I am so embarrassed because for decades I've been mispronouncing Sinex, and it is Phoenix? Cinex. Oh my gosh, so embarrassing. And Sunset Drive. So on 101, and every particular map, if they're online, they're available, and I don't know if there's any out front. Every map has a table on the backside or associated with it, and it has a huge table of data. So when I talk about the deviation, that all those particular data are associated with that map. And this particular map, the deviation is 8.09%. So it's beneath that 10% threshold that the courts have allowed. Now, when we're looking at the district letters here, we're going to focus on District F down south by the Holman Highway. This one has a Latino citizen voting age population of 23% and a non-Hispanic Asian CVAP at 9%. It is 66% white. So that's 101. Map 108 has a 4.64% deviation. Same on District F. It has a 27% Latino CVAP, citizen voting age population, and a 9% Asian American Pacific Islander, 9%, and non-Hispanic white, 62%. 109 is at 5.28% deviation, a little bit tighter, trying to get to that 2,521 per district. It has District F, 27% Latino citizen voting age population, and non-Hispanic Asian at 9%, and non-Hispanic white at 62%. Map 116 is at 6.66% deviation, and District C, that green area there, that light shaded green area, that has a Latino CVAP at 24%, with a non-Hispanic Asian at 7%, and then a non-Hispanic white at 67%. And then when we're looking at 118, again, it's still beneath the threshold at 7.97% deviation. District C, The lighter shade of green, it's 26% Latino CVAP and non-Hispanic Asian at 6% with non-Hispanic white at 66%. 119, that is 3.29%. I believe it's the tightest deviation out of all the candidates here. In District C, it is 27% Latino CVAP, and then 8% non-Hispanic Asian, and 62% non-Hispanic white. And 121 is 5.63% deviation. That is District F is Latino CVAP at 21%, and Asian at 9%, non-Hispanic Asian that is, and then non-Hispanic white is at 64%. So there are the 7 maps. That concludes this portion of my presentation, and I'm going to go back to Mayor to take it from here.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. And now we look at my handy dandy little list of what we're doing tonight because it's a lot of steps. We are going to receive the public. Do you have anything, Mr. Mogensen? Or okay, we're going to receive the public comment. This is as to the maps. And can I get a show of hands in chambers and online of how many folks are wishing to comment on the maps? This is not the sequencing. That'll be a separate item. Okay, we got one, only 2 in chambers. How many online?
2 callers online.
Okay, we're going to proceed 3 minutes in chambers first, and we will take the maps at this point.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name's John Murphy, and I'm afraid I'm going to subject you to something you've heard before. City government should be open and transparent. Transparency provides residents with reliable information about decision-making. The benefits, I think, are self-evident. It builds trust with residents, it demonstrates integrity, and it increases civic engagement. And a key part of transparency and decision-making is sharing the information you have when making your decision with the public. We have a right to know how you conduct business. You have a duty to share what information you have with us. So tonight you're deciding the district maps and the sequencing for the election. But the information you have and are not sharing with residents is where you live in relation to the district maps you're designing. Perhaps you think that information is irrelevant, and to acknowledge it would be a distraction. But that's not really up to you to decide. Your responsibility is to share the information you have, and it's up to us to decide if you're acting in the best interests of the city. Your agenda report asserts the City Council has conducted the process of designing district boundaries without regard to the residents of council members to remain in compliance with the mandatory criterion which prohibits adoption of election district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent political candidate or political party. So what you're saying there is we're doing the right thing, trust us. I'm sorry, that's not enough. That's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to share information. And proceeding this way is not open. It's not transparent. And I'm really sorry to stand up here and to be a scold. It's no fun. I don't enjoy it, but I'm really disappointed in the way you're approaching this. I don't think it's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take the next comment and just note that this is about the maps. Come on up. Go ahead. This is about the maps. Sequencing is the next item.
My name is Mira B. Boone. I'm a resident of Pacific Grove. And I would like to emphasize again how important it is in the districts to keep the retreat area all together. They definitely have the same interest, and they also are a great help in keeping our history alive. There are two maps that do that without adding other things. One is 104, which is not on your list, and one is 118 from the one that I got off the website today, but it's not the same as the 118 that was just shown on the screen. So I'm not sure about that. I can't speak to that one. The 118 would keep the retreat together without adding anything else. I also think that it's important to keep districts north of Lighthouse in the retreat area, north and south separated, just to keep the retreat area totally together. And that would be from the water to Lighthouse, from First Street to Pacific. So I'm not sure what's happened with the 118, but the one I got today wasn't the same as this one. So 118 is not my recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead and go online for the next comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine Mellon?
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I am from Forest Grove Homeowners Association. We're a condominium complex of 113 units. And I'm simply following up to this evening on a written public comment that I provided to the City Council about several of the maps that were dividing our condominium complex up in half. And I'm sure this wasn't intentional, and it's very impressive the amount of obvious hard work that folks went into preparing all these maps. Right now, 116 and 119 divides our complex in half. I gave a lot of details about why we are a community of interest. That's in the email to the City Council, and I believe it was uploaded to this agenda material today. And the homeowners, we're a Firewise community also. We are the first and only still Firewise community in Pacific Grove. And it's Forest Grove Homeowners Association that is the Firewise community. And the Firewise community and our board of directors, we are the interface to the municipal government on public works issues, traffic, Firewise, and the like. If for some reason it's determined that it's okay to split up our complex up into two districts, it will be cumbersome. We can deal with it, but I would like to point out it would give us an unfair advantage because we would now have two council members to represent us and advocate for us. You know, the homeowners in a condominium complex, you own your interior airspace. Everything else, your exterior, your roof, your doors, your windows, your garage door, all of the roads, the water access, all of the infrastructure, and all of the surrounding ground and open space. That is common area, and that is the responsibility of the HOA, which is incorporated articles of incorporation. We have bylaws and CC&Rs, and it just does not seem logical that Forest Grove HOA would be divided up. That would be like dividing up Glen Oaks or the Country Club Gate, or even the the old Holman building, dividing that in half. So I see I have 15 seconds. I know it's a lot to read all the bullet points, but we are David Avenue, Congress Avenue, Forest Lodge Road, and then the shopping center. That is our boundaries and private roads throughout. Thank you.
Sharon Miller?
Yes, this is Sharon Miller, a longtime Pacific Grove homeowner. And I want to thank you for all the thought that you've put into this very complicated task in front of you. I just wanted to mention that in the previous meeting on this topic, a number of people mentioned that renters, as opposed to homeowners, might be a community of interest, and that family income might be something that would be of importance. I don't know whether that was considered in the drawing of these maps, or if it was something that those communities were dispersed throughout the whole city to be able to see them as separate neighborhoods. So my question is just, was the distinction between renters and homeowners considered, or was family income considered in drawing these maps? Thank you.
Thank you. No further hands are raised, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to the well, yes, actually, let me be a little more specific. We will bring it back to the council, but at this time, and thank you for those great comments. And at this time, I will acknowledge Councilmember Rao and I believe and/or Walking Stick to discuss the next part of this, which is the way in which we are going to select one of these maps.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Walking Stick and I had a conversation about this right as we were selecting the last Councilmember Garfield to take the open seat. And we both had the same exact thought. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get it on the previous agenda, but the question is, how can we make this process, A, more transparent, B, give the public backup documentation as to how we voted, and then C, make the process more streamlined so that we can make a decision, probably the same decision, but do it, in an hour or an hour 20 less than we did in the last one. And so I don't know, you want to put that up and I can run through it, and then Councilmember Walking Stick can offer his thoughts. But really what we looked at is we're going to have to make a selection based on, 5 or 6 maps that we narrow it down to. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the board account method basically will speed up the process. Each council member will rank the options in order of the preference from the most to the least. You'll get assigned points based on your preference. And then for transparency, council members will be giving a ballot. They will write their name on the ballot, and copies of these ballots will be attached to the council minutes. So it will be completely transparent as to how each one of us voted and for which maps and in which order. Next slide, please. So each council member would submit their ballot to the city clerk for tabulation. The city clerk will give the results to the mayor to read the results. And in the event of a tie, the process will be administered again using just the top candidates, the ones that are tied. In the event of another tie, I think we can then discuss whether the mayor should, at their discretion, make the final decision, I guess, as the tiebreaker. And then this is what the ballot example would look like. Council member 1 would actually be the name of the council member, and then the candidate or the issue or the whatever would go down. And so it would look something like map 108, 116, 122, 121, 117. And then at the end, everybody will be able to see what that total was and who the winner was. And anyway, it seemed like it would streamline the process, especially on these multiple choice questions. I just, for giggles, went back to the council member vote and looked at the way everybody voted, filled out the tally sheet, and the results would have been exactly the same. But we would have shaved off an hour and 20 minutes. So, Councilmember Walking Stick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Addressing the why use this tool? Number one, it's a It's a very expedient way to work through a lot of options and slim them down quickly. In a situation like this where we have large number of selections, it helps us to just really quickly name off our top three. We do the vote. We might even arrive at very likely could arrive at a conclusion in our very first round. But secondarily, in doing ranked voting, it helps to minimize bias on the part of the council member themselves. And Don, I think this speaks partially to your point, but personal bias is an issue that I think each of us is concerned with. We come to the table with certain experiences, certain backgrounds that will make us lean towards or against certain issues. And this helps us, instead of just saying here's this one thing I want, here's this one thing I'm going to fight for, here are several options that I agree with. And every one of the council members comes to the table with several options they agree with. And overall, you gather a consensus. And this is a tool that's been used in other mediums, especially things like, well, outside of politics and voting. It's also used in hiring practices so that the hiring managers or the people involved in the interview process help remove their own bias from the selection process. We're trying to do the same thing, but for our votes for the city. We're trying to put the city's needs and benefit ahead of everything else. This is a tool that helps us do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And now I'll open it up to questions of council members Rao and Walking Stick about this method. And I am also going to present another method, and then we will talk about that as well. But I want to give opportunity for questions of the council members, if anyone up here has any. Yes, Councilmember Garfield.
Thank you. I have a question to something you said is that each ranking is assigned points. So it's a weighted ranking so that the first one gets 5 points. Then 5, 4, 3. If you have 5 items, if we've got 7 maps, well, I mean, it's the number of items and then it.
And we could decide if we want, I mean, if you get down to the last 2.
First of all,
5, 6, and 7
in
get one.
principle, you're exactly correct.
Yeah.
Number one gets the most points. Second place gets
Lesser
lesser.
and on the way
Third
down.
place gets lesser.
So it really magnifies the first choice. It's a multiplier.
Not by a
one.
Yes,
By
it's
1.
there's a weighting there.
Yeah, that's
But
true,
it's
yeah.
not like we've got it's within a range of each other, and it keeps it within 1 point of each other, each of the ranks. If we magnified it as if we use that word, we'd have maybe if we had 10 points for the first one, 5 points for the second one, 0 points for the third one. That could really throw things pretty wonky. But the idea is to keep the points within a 1-point range of the next level. So everyone's got a fighting chance, Everyone's got a fighting chance. That's the idea.
Okay,
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
the description.
okay. Any further questions?
No, I just want to say that I think it's really good to be working on ways to streamline processes and still have everything pretty, laid out on the table. So thank you for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you. I just had a question for I have several things I'm going to say, but Mr. Mogensen, number 2 on the recommendation says, discuss a method for voting on a preferred map. That isn't, that's just a discussion on a preferred map, correct?
You'd like me to answer that one? You are now discussing the method by which you are going to make a decision on the preferred map. You've heard so far from Councilmember Rao and Walking Stick the so-called ranked choice voting method. I understand from the mayor that he's got a method that he would like to discuss as well. And then, unless somebody else has another method.
I'm not finished yet. Okay. I'm not finished.
Oh, I thought you asked a question.
No, well, I did, but I have another couple of other things I want to say. As a council member, this is the first time I've heard of the Borda method. I'll be honest with you. I read, I was gone this weekend. I read the packet yesterday and spent several hours in trying to find out the Borda method. Borda method was found by, in 1770 by a person by the name of Jean Borda, you know. And I looked through the Borda method and found that there was nothing that said something about the districts. It talked about the Heisman Trophy, how they rank the Heisman Trophy. They rank sports figures this way, depending upon how the combine comes out. They also rank conferences. If they mentioned a mathematics conference and people wanted a certain city, and so I didn't see anything on that. I found that you know, using this system, and I appreciate them bringing this up, but I also think it's common sense that we should say, we've gone through this several times. We should say, each council person should say out loud which districts they would like. Because I truly believe, and I want to be objective about this, but I think it's something that we should say if we I'm going to use an example, and this isn't one of the districts I'm going to be choosing, but I'm just using number 128. Okay, that's not on the agenda, but I just want to use 128. And if I vote for 128 as a council person, that's being transparent. I want 128, you know, and if the mayor decides, hey, I want map 145, I'm using these as examples, right? And I think it's more transparent if we say, this is the map we want. And if suddenly we have 4 council people that say, oh, we all want that map too, or they repeat the map, then that is the majority right there. So I think it cuts back staff time. Sandra is going to have to count these up, then she's going to have to maybe recount them up. And we just had an audit about people, too much work going on. They're willing to work, but that's just I think it seems complicated in my opinion on this Borda method. I think common sense is that we say what we want and let the public know which map we were recommending. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rao.
Just to answer 2 questions. One, this in no way precludes us from having a discussion about what the merits of each map. That discussion would still take place. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we provided the clerk with an Excel spreadsheet. All she has to do is key in the numbers and it'll tally the votes for her in a very quick Excel spreadsheet. So I think if we can narrow it down to 5 or 6 maps, be great if it was 3 or 4, but say if it was 5 or 6 maps, then and then we can use this method to select the last one. Now, nobody's going to hurt my feelings if this isn't what you would like to do. I'm just trying to, I think Councilmember Walking Stick and I realized that there was some efficiencies that could have been had in the last choosing. So that's why we came up with it. But the clerk has an Excel spreadsheet that once she keys it in, and then the great part about this is we will all put our names on the sheets and the public in the minutes can look to see how we voted and what the Excel spreadsheet tally told us. So it's an idea.
Yeah.
And, if we have feelings, then that's okay too. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, I appreciate one other thing. I appreciate the work you've done on it, but I still feel that we just have to verbally, in my opinion, verbally say which district is ours, or maybe it's the first top 2 districts. And then if it turns out that there's 4 council people that want this particular district, then the decision is made, or 5 or 7. So that's my my point. Anyway,
Okay, thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and front my alternative theory of events here. I think we're all trying to make it more, I think everybody knows that I want to be more efficient and I work for that all the time. And so in this particular instance, my issue with introducing a new format like this is it probably is something that we would need more time to think about and is a little bit complex, in my opinion. But the main problems I have are that performing ballots on the dais, I think it's more transparent to actually just speak what your preference is for the record and not be creating kind of ballots up here. I know I haven't done that in the 8 years that I've been up here. And so that's my first problem with it. And my second problem, and this only came out after I really thought about it for a while. I had to let it all sink in and think about it. So, and the second thing is when you're ranking, you're saying, it's not my favorite, but I still like this one second best and this one third best and this one fourth best. And I think to some degree, there might be people up here that don't like anything but one, or maybe they like one and they could live with another. But when we're talking about whittling down 18 maps, I don't think that's what it is. I think we'd already whittled it down to, I think 5 or 6 on the last go around. So we're kind of already in the ballpark with the 5 to 6, in my opinion, on the last time. So we're kind of already gone through that whittling process, and we've gotten a lot of input. So I don't want to make this a long item at all. My suggestion would be that, and have to go through the counts and all that kind of stuff. My suggestion would be that we poll each council member, and each council member states their preferred map. And I'll have Mr. Pirk, if I get it wrong, because we went over this, but if I get it wrong, he can correct me. We poll each council member and take their preferred number. If there's 4 people that are in favor of one certain map, I'm going to invite a motion to approve that map, because that would make sense to me. If there were less than 4, say 3 and 2 and 2, for instance, we will vote on the 2 and the 2. The 3 makes it to the final round, and the 2 and the 2 will vote between those to create the final round. And that would be a 2-step process. So there's a chance that we will hit it on the first try, and that we'll have 4 people in favor of one map, and that would make it a very quick process. And then we'd move on to the sequencing. So that would be my, and Mr. Pirk, please correct me if I said that in an incorrect way. That would be my suggested course of action, rather than the Borda count method or whatever was presented there.
Yes, you said it correctly. I think that could be for shorthand referred to as a polling method.
Yes.
And the other being the ranked choice voting method. So you have now 2 methods. So what my recommendation would be now is for you to vote on which of those 2 methods you're going to use to select the map.
Yes, and one more comment before I start looking at others. I see Councilmember Garfield, is that I think to some degree my concern is, as I stated, the forced ranking of different maps that perhaps council members aren't in favor of, and then having to put them down, in some like the second position, and they're like, well, I really don't like this map. I don't want to select this map. So I think that's my main concern. But at this time, so as Mr. Pirk has cited up the issue, we're going to have to vote on which method to use, and I'm going to recognize Councilmember Garfield is getting there. Almost got there.
Thank you. I'm here. No problem. I'm going to suggest something that we have an opportunity to find a better method. I agree with what you said about the importance of speaking up for what we want and having a more familiar method, but we have an opportunity to try something in parallel. Can we do what you suggested? We doing this, and at the same time, put in our rankings, give them to Sandra. We figure out how close we came. We get an exercise of trying a new methodology. see how it works, see how comfortable we are. Maybe we come back to it for other decisions as well. But for now, we just do the, I like this map because. So that's my suggestion. My suggestion is we do two things in parallel and quit talking about it.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Walkenstick.
Thank you. Just for clarification, you're saying we use the polling method for our actual vote, and then as the exercise, just to test out, trial out a new method, we see what would have happened with the ranked voting.
We'd learn a lot.
That's a very interesting idea.
Yeah, Councilmember Paduri online.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My suggestion is just, we have 7 maps here right in front of us. These were the focused maps. My suggestion is to just narrow this down to like 3 maps and just have 3, kind of discuss what the 3 maps are and move it forward from there. So I'm prepared to select 3 maps from the 7 of the list and kind of take it from there.
Yeah, that's a different method. Okay, Councilmember McDonald, you haven't said anything yet. You want to chime in here? All right.
Thank you. I can see the value of both. I think the important thing is, especially for transparency, that we have discourse and I think it's important that we all do talk about why we're selecting the maps we select, which was never intended not to be the choice. I will say that this method, the ranked choice, has been used in employee stuff for quite some time. So it's not unfounded to use it in this type of format. But I specifically wanted to ask the city attorney, do you have any recommendations one way or the other, or both perfectly valid ways to do this process?
My recommendation would be if you are preferring the ranked choice method, that you do not use a ballot, that you instead, when it's your turn, verbally state which of the maps is your first choice, second, third, fourth, fifth. I'm seeing 7 maps on the screen. I thought there were 6, but I'm seeing 7. So however many there are, and then and once you've done that, and then if you want to elaborate and explain why you picked your number 1 choice and what the reasons were. If you want to explain why you rank your second choice second, you could do that. You could do all 7 if you want, or you could just advocate for your preferred choice. That way, all the council hears, every other council member, the public hears from each of you what your choice is, and I think that would be preferred to having a ballot filled out and put together by the clerk and announced.
Okay, thanks for that. So my follow-up to that would be that it's sort of blending almost all of the suggestions, is that we maybe each list our top 3, because we'll have a discussion first. It'll become pretty clear why we might have eliminated certain ones, because I agree, why select ones you know you don't want. And then if we each just list our top 3, we could see if we don't have initial agreement, that'll just make it easy to facilitate the discussion of where we go from there.
Yeah, yes.
May I ask a question? Because on page 85 of the agenda, it shows as an example, map 110. But when you look up here, of the 7 maps, 110 isn't on here. Was there an effort to par them down, or what? Maybe we can ask
Yeah.
the
Let's ask the
consultant.
consultant on that.
How did we get to these 7?
Well, I will say, I know that 121 was added late and it wasn't one of the ones we pared down. It was something that came in at the end. Go ahead.
If I could, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I do think there's a small discrepancy, but maybe not where you were just saying it. So in the staff report for this time, we reattached all the maps because technically all the maps are still on the table. Last council meeting, you chose to narrow it down to, you said 5, and we listed those 5 in the staff report. So it was 101, 108, 109, 118, and 119. So 116 was not one that you include the first time. So I think it's just a glitch. And like I said, it's really not a technical.
I'm sorry, Matt. I believe Councilmember Padori said 116 at the very last minute.
So there were 6?
Yes. So what you see here is the 6, what I call the focus maps. And then 121 is one that came in the interim.
But we didn't discuss it or anything.
You have not discussed 121, correct?
Correct. That was in the second round. So, so the staff report evidently then is the one that has the error. So 116 was a map you brought forward.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Amelia.
I agree with the mayor that we should verbally say which maps we're supposed to have. That's transparency.
Does anyone wish to make a motion to support a polling? And then I guess we would take up whether we want to do the exercise as an exercise to see if it came out the same or not.
Mayor, I wasn't quite sure what you just said, so,
Okay.
and if I'm
That's
confused,
fair.
possibly somebody else is. My suggestion to you is you pick one method.
Mhm.
Pick whatever the method is, whether
Okay.
it's ranked choice or the polling method or the hybrid that Councilmember McDonald mentioned, but you pick that method, and that's the method that you use. And that if you do pick the ranked choice, as I said earlier in my comments, that it be done verbally and not by ballot.
Thank you. So is anyone at this time willing to make a motion as to method?
I'll make a motion that we poll what
Okay.
you suggested, Mayor.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Amelia has moved to follow the polling method that I described and the city attorney has recorded.
And you would just be indicating your number one choice.
Under what I presented, yes. And do I have a second for that? Yes, absolutely. Councilmember
So
McDonald.
I'm not understanding if we're each only choose, oh, I see. We're each choosing one. And if that comes up differently. So I guess the thing is we might have two that are close to each other. So if we each picked two, that would give us more options for like, well, I guess we'll vote again. So the idea is everybody picks just one, their top pick.
Right.
And I'm having a hard time narrowing between my top two. So
Right.
hence the question. And so there's an advantage to having us say out loud our top two or three, and then see if we all agree on our top one, and if not, further the discussion.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that is it may work if we all want to take one pass and talk about maybe a couple maps or one or two we like. And maybe after we do that, there'll be some commonalities such that you will select a different map. Maybe we could do it that way before we actually vote on the process. Would you think that would work for you?
Yeah, I think that as long as we have the discussion first, and we maybe even narrow down to some top choices as Councilmember mentioned that.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not hearing a second, so maybe we should just start discussing what maps we like and take one pass at it. Okay, great. Who would like to go first? Okay, Councilmember Garfield over there on the left. We'll just go left to right.
What criteria we used in this discussion, and I did rank them, and I could rank every single one of these, 1 through 7. I was ready. But it really pointed out something interesting, and this is an important part of the ranking. It made me decide which of my criteria were more important to me. So if I had a map that did X and the other map did Y, was X more important or Y more important? And that was a very useful exercise. So I still want to keep a hold of this as a methodology that we want to come back to and look at for its benefits. But for now, what was really important to me was looking where we had shared responsibilities, where two districts would share advocacy, perhaps. And one of the most important ones to me was that downtown area, the business area, was shared amongst at least a couple of districts. And then I thought that the shoreline should also be shared as well. And then I looked at our parks. Was it important to have clustered around a park? And then neighborhoods. And we've heard from people who have very specific ideas about neighborhoods. And I wanted to make sure that the area close to Country Club Gate was intact, and that the retreat was intact as much as possible. And so for those reasons, I picked map 118, and that is my first choice. The second choice for me is 109. Mostly things were intact. The shared coast and downtown, but not George Washington Park, but it also breaks up Del Monte Park in a funny way. So that's why 118 is my first choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll go to Councilmember Rao next.
Thank you. And I think you were very clear in how, I mean, I agree in the way that you thought about it. When I looked at it, my decision criteria, number one was not gerrymandering, Del Monte Park, keeping Country Club Gate together, using Senex as a dividing line because that's where our school district between the elementary schools is divided. And then all eyes, as many eyes on the coast as possible. For those reasons, and including that map 108 gives you, out of the 6 maps, it gives you 5 business clusters, commercial districts, or a large, in the case of A on here, it gives you the Pinos Lighthouse, the golf links, and Sunset. So because of that, I thought map 108 was my first choice. And map 121 was my second choice. And I know that we cut the retreat on this map, but it did give Country Club Gate was all together. It didn't gerrymander Del Monte Park. It left Senex as the ending, and it seemed to keep the neighborhoods intact. So my number one choice would be 108.
Thank you. Councilmember Drury.
Okay, when you said left to right, I thought folks in room. But so my I think I actually am in favor of 101 primarily. I just think it is really understandable. First of all, like a top-down kind of approach to say why we're doing this without getting into some nuances. It keeps the I would say the Forest Grove Homeowners Association kind of intact. It also, from a districting perspective, just anything under like Lighthouse Avenue kind of like gets into one district, so on and so forth. So 101 would be my first choice, but I like the comments that Councilmember Rao has made. So 108 was actually, in fact, my second choice. Those are my top two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and go next since I'm going along the way here. I am a 101 person. It attracts the school district, keeps the neighborhoods kind of in a nice format. I think that the park stays all in one place. You got your George Washington Park in district sort of, and your central second edition in the Wood Streets there together. Then the subdivision or the area mapped by D, that little area seems to be one little area. As the best it possibly can, keeps Del Monte Park together in this sort of sunset district. So I really do like 101. I think gives us 3 coastal districts, which I think is enough. And because 4 would be a majority. So I do like that idea. And obviously I like the Lighthouse breakdown and the Senex Street breakdown, and then the Lighthouse. So I think it does the best that you can possibly do given the restrictions and the law, because the law restricts us quite a bit on what we can do and in this regard. So I'm going with 101, and I'll move on to Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Okay, I'm the next batter up. So I'm not going to go through everything, but I originally chose 101. And the reason, and I just found out about this, and maybe you mentioned it before, but it's part of Pacific Grove Unified School District. And if we're trying to articulate with PG Unified School District, even though they have Pebble Beach, I think 101 pretty much gives everything to each district. It's divided evenly with the districts. I'm just a 101 person. And that's where I believe it would be best for the city of Pacific Grove.
Move on. Thank you very much. Move on to Councilman McDonald.
Thanks very much. And so I think my approach was a little bit different because one of the things I was looking at is what are the neighborhoods that are important to people and how do we give different people in the community a say in things? And my concern with maps 101, 121, and 118 is that all of those have George Washington Park, the Butterfly Sanctuary, and the coast in the same district. So I had more concern with the fact that like all of those things have a like one representative handles all of those. And so that for me was a bit of an issue. Because of that, I put 101 in didn't care for that because of that particular perspective. I think other than that, it's potentially drawn well. 108, I think, would be my top choice because it does give more representation, because I understood the comment about, you know, the LCP is complicated and maybe we want to, but at the same time, I think that most of us who live here have a very vested interest in the coast. So the advantage of having 108 is 4 districts have a representative dealing with their particular portion of the coast. And I think that's beneficial. It does keep the George Washington Park neighborhood together, the Lighthouse District together, the Retreat District together. And I believe, you had said that it also keeps the condo complex together. So I think for that reason, I think 108, my next was going to be actually one that did break up the FAOA, and I hadn't realized that. I'd missed that part of it, which would have been 119. 109 would be then probably the next on the way I had ranked them, just for the reason that there's 3 who share coasts and it's broken up in pretty good blocks. But George Washington Park is kept intact with the 4 blocks going inward so that the people who have the most vested interest in George Washington Park have that. It also keeps the Retreat intact. So those are the reasons I would choose 108 and then 109 probably.
Okay, so just to summarize, 108, 109 be your top 2? Got it. Thank you so much, Councilmember Walking Stick.
All right, thank you. I guess I'll start off with my top 2 since this looks like it might conclude. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay, starting over. My number 1 was 101. My number 2 was 109. The criteria I was going by was trying to keep neighborhoods of interest together. Of course, I wanted the school districting kept together, so we divided along Senex. I wanted to keep, again, George Washington Park, again, area of interest kept together. My 101 choice does kind of conflict with your idea of, well, we've got Asilomar, the Butterfly Sanctuary, and George Washington Park all in one section. My hope is that our earlier discussion, in which I feel that all people across, so all of the representatives across Pacific Grove care deeply for all of those things. Those are things that are not just important to a district, but important to the city as a whole, every person in the city as a whole. So my faith is, I'm putting my faith in our community pride and civic responsibility on that one. The other thing, the reason I chose 101 was because it and 109 most fairly represented socioeconomic demographic distribution across Pacific Grove, which wasn't really addressed directly when people were making maps. But when I compared that geographical grouping versus these maps, those 2 maps really sprung out a lot. So that played very heavily. So one of the callers wondered if renters versus homeowners and socioeconomic demographics came into the making of the maps. I can't speak to that. Everybody made maps based on their own personal criteria. However, during evaluation, that was very much a part of the analysis. So thank you for calling in and asking about that. But 101 is my number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. So now having seen that, I have 4 101s as their top map. I have 2 108s as a top map, and I have 3 times 109 mentioned. So with that, does anyone wish to support my polling method since we did have 4, or do you want to whittle it down to 108 and 101?
Your Honor?
Yes, Councilmember Walking Stick.
I would like to support your polling method. I think it would work out just fine with what we've discovered during discussion.
Great. And so there was a motion and it never got addressed. Councilmember Emilio to support the polling method. Can we get a revival if we need to?
Yes.
Okay. And so do I have a second? Thank you. Councilmember Garfield seconded. And now I'll hear discussion on it if there is any discussion. Councilmember Garfield?
Yeah, quick discussion is, I want to underscore what Councilmember Walking Stick pointed out, is that occasionally we get things that are very local and have great concern about a geographic locus. But the vast majority of what we do concerns all of us equally. And I think actually if I'm correct about where I think people live, it didn't make any difference about the way that we voted. So I support 101. I will jump in with 101 for that reason, to make it more unanimous. But I still want to figure out better methods for voting over time, eventually.
Flavia, are we finished? I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Yeah, well, we've been tackling some interesting issues this year, that's for sure. And these have all been kind of firsts, frankly. Councilmember Paduri on discussion.
Yes, thank you. I had a question. This is directed to the city manager. So all of these, it looks like we're ready to move on with this, but the information that was provided here in the agenda packet, as well as the interactive map that was available, all of these will be kept online for somebody to review at a later point in time, correct? And what is if that is correct, what is the extent of how long it will be available?
Yeah, that's correct, Councilmember Paduri. We have to keep it for 10 years. So it'll be live on our website for 10 years. Or until we redistrict in 2031, perhaps, and then it'll be a new 10-year clock to start.
Okay, so, and I just wanted to also confirm that the link that was provided in this agenda packet, that's going to be the same link moving forward. We're not going to take all of this and put it on another page, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we'll keep it in the same spot on our website.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Do you want to ask a question? Okay.
2031, I will not be on the council.
Okay, that was
We'll note
good.
that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to take a roll call vote on the polling method. And then after, if that passes, which I expect that it will, then I'm going to poll everybody our top map. And then at that time, if there's 4, then I'll entertain a motion to select the map. So roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Emilio,
101? Yes.
It's the motion on how.
It's just the motion on how to take the vote. And
Okay.
it's your motion to polling.
Yeah, it's my motion to poll.
Yes.
And we do the count as to what the mayor mentioned.
Yeah, so it's just yes, so
Just a yes.
give me a aye
Just
or
a
a no.
yes or a no.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garfield,
Yes.
Councilmembers Walking Stick,
Yes.
Rao,
Yes.
Baduri.
Aye.
Donald? Yes. And Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, now I'll start on the right and go to the left. This time to make it fair.
Can we have one more discussion about the maps? Because I just want to say one thing about 101.
Sure.
And the reason I didn't pick it is if you look at the deviation is 8.09. And that means that if any, variation is very close to that 10%. So when we get the census in 2020 and 2030, I may not be here either, so it doesn't really matter. But if we get the census and that is so close that it makes us have to redistrict, I just feel that a map that's somewhere around that 5% deviation gives us the room to move and not have to go through this exercise again in 2030. But, and I would Senex isn't the dividing line here. Some of that purple comes up into that Sunset number E. So that was the reason that 101 was a little scary for me, is I didn't want to have to go through this exercise again. I figured if we were, in the middle of that deviation, the chances that you would move 252 people one way or another in a district would be pretty slim chance that that could happen. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go to Councilmember Walking Stick and ask for his preferred map.
101.
Councilmember McDonald,
108.
101.
Councilmember Emilio, sorry. 101?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember or Mayor Smith, 101. Sandra, are you recording this? We had 101 by Walking Stick. We had 108 by McDonald. We had 101 by Emilio and 101 by me. And we're going to Councilmember Paduri next.
101.
101. Councilmember 108.
118.
118.
Sticking out for more votes.
Okay, so I think that was 4 for 101. Okay, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to select the map.
I'll entertain a motion to select map 101.
So we have a motion by Amelia,
Second.
second by Garfield. Any further discussion as to the selection? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia. Councilmember Garfield,
Aye.
Councilmembers Walking Stick,
Aye.
Boone,
Was that for me? If it is, it's 9.
Chubbs.
yes,
Aye.
and Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries
McDonald.
7-0.
McDonald.
McDonald. Aye. Sorry. Motion carries 7-0. I'm sorry. I forgot you.
Thank you very much. So that's just one. We passed unanimously one part of this item. Now we're on to item part 2 of the item. So now, thank you very much for the discussion, though. I think it was all really beneficial, frankly, to give the voters and the residents some background on everything that we're thinking about. And I think the record is clear and there's a lot of good comments. Now we are going to have a presentation on sequencing, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Mogensen? Hold on a sec. Speak to the mic, sorry. So
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. Tilton, a little bit of a chance to do a quick switch.
okay. Hold on just a second. I have a break request and I might do that now. And so we'll take the break now and when we come back, we'll intend to complete the meeting. So 10-minute break, 7:45. Thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
Councilmember Perdue? There he is. I think.
Sandra, were you saying something to me?
Yeah, I have to post that too. I didn't get a chance to.
Okay. I think we are back. We're back online. Okay, here we go. It's 7:46. We took a 10-minute break. We're coming back from the break.
Can I just say one thing?
Councilmember Rao, you have a comment?
Yeah, just a reminder that when it's your turn to talk, I know it's really hard, but the minute you move away, you back off the mic, you look one way or the other, the people on Zoom can't hear you. So if you could, I know it's hard, but just when you're talking, just, you don't have to eat the microphone, but don't be too far away from it.
Yeah. Well,
This isn't karaoke.
well, yeah, I think if that's correct, you're going to stay close to the mic. I'm always thinking about it and trying to, and you there's not a lot of theatrics that you can pull when you stick in this close to the mic, but that's okay. Here we go. Where are we? We're coming back from the break. We're on the second item 11A part 2, we'll call it. This is I think this is going to be less onerous than the map selection. And we're going to go to NDC to make a presentation on sequencing. So to determine the sequence of the maps, are we all ready? I see a lot of movement over there.
Just a minute to get.
Okay, we're going to just hold for a second. Apparently. This is a highly technical deal, so we got to make sure that we get this right.
Oh, it's already.
How are we doing? Okay, Mr. Clinton, go ahead. Thank you.
Excuse for that delay. I accidentally hit exit, and this is not my machine. So let me just delay this further. So now we're going to go into sequencing. And by the way, let me be, I guess, the first to congratulate you on this. It's a very historic action that you guys went through, and we'll do it again in 2031. So we're looking at sequencing, and I know you haven't seen this, but under the Elections Code 10010, in determining the final sequence of the district elections conducted in a political subdivision in which members of the governing body will be elected at different times to provide for staggered terms of office, the governing body, yourselves, shall give special considerations to the purposes of California Voting Rights Act of 2001, and it shall take into account the preferences expressed by members of the districts. We don't need to worry about the school districts piece. And for some reason, it's not advancing. There we go. So in practice, when we get to this, the number of seats up for a given election is set and cannot change. Okay, so after tonight, that'll be the way it goes with respect to the districts and their election cycle, 2026 or 2028. We're looking at respect to the voters, an incumbent alone in a district has the election year assigned to match the incumbent's term. Okay. And I'm going to show you a map that I just received your, generally where you live and where you live as it relates to map 101. Okay. I had no knowledge of that prior to recess. Okay. Tonight. And then it talks about what we do with vacant seats, et cetera. Okay. If the next election is a relatively high turnout presidential election, and we know it's not, assign the seat to a presidential year. And then when we're talking about vacant seats with a traditional low turnout or underrepresentation, okay? So, basically, if your term ends in 2026, option one is you leave and you reside in a 2026 district. Option one is you leave office at the end of your current term and 2028. Excuse me. Let me restart this again. If your term ends in 2026, you run for election in a district at the end of that current term. Okay. If you're residing in a district electing in 2026 and the term ends in 2028, option one is you leave office at the end of your current term in 2028. You can run, but not as an incumbent when the district is up for election again in 2030. Option two is in 2026, you run for by-district seat. If elected, is sworn into a by-district four-year term, creating a vacancy for remaining 2 years of an at-large election. So basically what that means is if you have a district where there are two of you in it, one's a 26 and one's a 28, and you know that the 26 is going to run again, the 28 still operates as an at-large council member. The 28 member can choose to run in 26, and if they win in 26, they resign the 28 seat and they start a new term. Okay, does that make sense to you? If they don't win, they fulfill their term till they're in 2028, or they move out of the district, you know. So that's essentially what you're looking at. Now, I'm going to stop sharing, and this is what it looks like. And thanks for putting me on the Zoom, whoever's doing that. And again, I did not know where you lived up until about right at recess. And this is how it falls out with map 101. Okay. And hopefully you can see that. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. That's too much. So when I look at District A, and by the way, we're going to determine the election sequencing cycles by letter, like we have here. So map 101 has letters A through F. After we get the election sequencing finished by using those letters, we're then going to change those letters to numbers. Okay. Your registrar of voters probably does not like letters for districts. Okay, since you have measures that use letters, et cetera. Okay. So District A, there's two incumbents in there, both with seats expiring in 26. So that's a pretty simple one. District A would be a 2026 on the cycle. Then you look at District D. Well, excuse me, let's go into District B. You have a 2026 and you have a 2028. You make a determination which one you want that to be. Do you want it a 26 or 28? Again, if you make it a 26, the 28 incumbent is still an at-large council member. Okay. C is easy because it's a 28. The term expires in 28. D, there's no council member in currently.
Mr. Tilton, I hate to interrupt, but there are no letters, or we're not seeing the letters in these maps, and maybe because it's such a small.
Yeah. Let me see if I can do it this way for you. It's the letters are really small. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Here's letter A. They're actually really small.
Oh, that's the same as 101. Okay. Thank you. I'll just refer to that.
Apologies. This is 101 map. Yeah. that help you? There's a legend there. Okay, so I can also go by colors. The District A is the pink area. And I spoke of, there's two incumbents of 2026. And then District B is the blue area. It has 28 and a 26 in it. Okay, we'll have to make a determination on that one.
Yeah, wait, I think one of them is the mayor.
Okay.
I'm the red dot
So there.
and I'm at
that's-
large. I don't
That's,
have to do
that's a
this.
2020, that's a 2028 district as well, in my mind.
Okay. And then C is right near us here. It's in the center. It's this yellowish part. That's 28 since there's just one of you there. Over here is D. There are no incumbents in D. In District E, this part right here, by Pacific Grove High School, all the way over to, Pacific Grove Community High School, Monterey Bay Charter School area. You have two. Councilmember Amio's already mentioned he's not going to seek reelection. So that's perhaps a 28 as well. And then F is blank. There's nobody in F. So based on my calculations, I already have 3 at 2028. That would be districts B, C, and E. I'm an English major, so I would have to guess that 26 would be in A, D, and F. Would you agree with that? Okay. Counselor, do we want to vote on that?
We gotta take it out for public comment. So we just finished the presentation.
That's why I've never been a mayor. Thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Garfield.
Thank you. Sort of legal question. Is it in reference, we don't have this circumstance, but you'd said something about if there were a 28 and a 26 council member in a single district, the 28 could run in 26. And then if they won, resign their 28. I don't think we have a safe seat provision. Do we have a safe seat provision? So that if somebody who's 28, whose term would be up in 28, decides to run in 26, are they vacating their 28 position?
My understanding is that they would have that option of running in 2026, and if they didn't get a 4-year term in 2026, they would complete their term until 2028.
So we do have a safe seat provision in our council? Or is it just this?
Well, we do have our special counsel, Marguerite Leone, who has joined us, and she is an election law expert. So perhaps, Marguerite, if you could weigh in on that question about that you just heard from Councilmember Garfield.
Yeah, Councilmember Garfield, in that situation, unless there's something contrary in the charter, if the election is in 2026, a person who has a term ending in 2028 can run in that election. You don't have to resign unless you're elected. So if that person were to lose, they just continue out their term.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll read the charter and double check.
Does the staff have any further presentation? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it out to the public on the sequencing. There's public comment on the sequencing. If you wish to comment, go ahead. Now is the time on the sequencing, please.
One caller online, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Inga Lawrenson Dimer.
Thank you, Sandra. First, I would like to say that the person I have most difficulty hearing is our city attorney. He doesn't speak into his microphone and it's not high enough. Others are problematic, but definitely the city attorney. And as far as the sequencing goes, it's as I've said all along, in my little section of D, as in dog, we've never had a representative from here, a city council person elected or had the ability. Anyway, I think we need to get that taken care of because we've had a lot of decisions that all the rest of Pacific Grove has made for us that we never have been able to or had a representative fighting for us. So I'm absolutely good with in 26 having the ADF. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further hands, Mayor.
And we'll go ahead and close public comment on the sequencing, bring it back to the council for discussion and assignment of the sequencing.
So Mayor, I would just mention that, I think it was mentioned earlier that these letters would then get translated into numbers. So for example, for 2026, A, B, and F would be districts 1, 3, and 5. And then for 2028, it would be 2, 4, and 6.
Okay. The correlating number. Okay. Who would anyone like to comment on the sequencing and bring this to a conclusion?
I
Councilmember Rao.
I think this is great and I'm ready to make a motion
Okay.
unless anyone else has feelings or thoughts.
No, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the sequencing as specified. And if you want to read it again, we can certainly do that as well so that it's clear. But the way that I show it is in 2026, we have A, D, and F. In 2028, we have B, C, and E. Is that right? Okay. And then we'll convert those to numbers as soon as we get this motion approved. Okay. So I make a motion that. Okay, and we have a second. Councilmember McDonald.
Mr. Mayor, I think it maybe deserves one quick second. Make sure we got our numbers right.
Yes.
Before we take a vote.
Yes.
So I'll read back what I've heard, so far and make sure everybody's on the same page then based on these on the map. So we have 1 is A as an apple. We have District 2 will be B as in boy. District 3 will be D as in dog. District 4 will be C.
Whoa.
Well, I'm trying to put them in a number sequence, I guess, just to get down the, or we can start over and go the other direction if you want as well. District 5 is F as in Frank, and then District 6 is E as in Edgar. And then if you go the other direction, A is District 1, B will be District 2, C will be District 4, D will be District 3, E will be District 6, and F will be District 5. Is that what everybody has?
Yes. I could we just relook at that for just 1 second? So we have in 2026, it's A, B like boy, and F like Frank.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay.
The motion was ADF, yes, ADF.
That's correct.
Alpha Dog F, Frank.
Frank.
Okay.
Foxtrot,
Sometimes
if you're a
B and
Marine.
D sounds similar. So,
Okay.
So and for 2026 is A Apple, D Dog, F Frank. And then 2028 is B Boy, C Cat, E Elephant. So is that what everybody has? Okay. And then in terms of assigning numbers to those, did you want to restate what you did?
I think the simplest way is odds is 2026 and evens is 2028.
So to clarify, do you want me to clarify the motions specifically with the numbers?
Sure, if you want to try to do that. Good luck.
In 2026, we have A1, D3, and F5. So districts 1, 3, 5. In 2028, we have districts B2, C4, and E6.
How does that sound, Mr. Tilton?
You got it.
Is that your recommended sequencing that we've just moved and seconded? I will get.
I've never been asked for a recommendation, but it feels good. So yes.
Well, I'm asking for it because you're here. But I'll go to Councilmember Fedori. Discussion.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to double check so we're voting on the 3 districts that'll go to elections in a certain year. But there was a comment made that in a certain district, if somebody's terms ends in 2028, they can run for it in 2026. So by making this motion, what happens to any council member who wants to run in 2026 in a different district?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I'd have to.
Make one point of clarification. You must live in a district in order to run that district. So if you currently live in a district we just created, you couldn't run in a different district in 2028 unless you move.
Okay, so that's an important point, right? So I don't think that was explained, which is if you're moving to a different district, then you can run in 2026 in that district, correct?
Well, once that district seat is up, so 2028, the odd districts, no longer can you run at large. You have to run for the district. So if you're 1, 3, or 5 in 2026, only people who live in the district can run for the seat.
Maybe recognized.
Oh, absolutely. Councilman Walkenstick, discussion.
From what I see with where everybody is either terming out or has been elected for a term to 2028, we shouldn't have, it doesn't look like, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't look like we have any special circumstances. There should be no conflict on this. This system should go into place and election should proceed normally. And with the sequencing that's been decided upon or has been moved upon, it looks like there's no special circumstance that's going to be that we're going to need to act on. Everything should just take care of itself.
Who's going to run to have a 10-year term?
Right.
No, I think it's
Just to address your concern directly, chaps. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, so my concern is, I was just going to say that if a council member who terms out in 2028 were to move, say, in this case, into District D, which is D for David, in 2026, they can run as a safe seat option? Is that correct?
I think that's a legal issue. I don't know if we can answer that before we complete tonight. That's gonna have to take a little bit of research, in my opinion.
Well, unless Marguerite has the answer.
Yeah, let me repeat the question to make sure that I understand it. So we have 3 council members with with terms ending in 2028. We have 2 open seats. One of the 2028 council members may wish to move to one of the open seats. If that occurs and that open seat is up in 2026, may the council member run for the open seat? And the question is, and the answer is yes.
So Margaret, let me put it a different way. A council member has his term ending, his or her term ending in 2028. There is a district election process in 2026. That district does not have any council members today. This council member moves to that district in 2026, physically, residentially, and runs for that open district position. If this council member were to lose that election, will the council member retain his or her seat?
Yes.
Okay, that was my clarifying question. Thank you.
Yes. I do want to note, and I realize that there is one council member who has expressed a view that they will not be running. And I believe that council member is currently in letter D. In letter B, there are two council members, one with a term ending in 26 and one with a term ending in 28. If letter B is on the ballot in 28, then the council member with the term ending in 26 will have to sit out for 2 years unless he or she moves to D or F.
Marguerite, this is Brian. There is one council member in District B, like boy, and the other dot you see there on the screen is the red dot is the mayor.
Fabulous. Thank you. Then we're okay.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna, oh, go ahead. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Emilio, go ahead.
Can I address Marguerite here?
Certainly.
Okay. Marguerite, so a question comes up if a council member is up on 2026 in a particular district and nobody runs, then can that council member step out for a few weeks and then run again? You understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't quite understand the question. So is this a situation where the council member lives in the district and is unopposed?
Dead.
I'm not hearing anything right now.
Sorry. I'm going to pass on that question, Marguerite, and later on ask Brian Burek later on.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Call on this. We've had a ton of discussion, so we're gonna vote on the ADF, BCE, ADF in 26 and BCE 28, and with the numbering given by Councilmember McDonald.
Councilmember Brown? Aye. Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio?
Oh.
Councilmember Walking Stick?
Aye.
Mayor Peduri?
Aye.
Councilmember Garfield?
Aye.
And Mayor Smith?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, and now at this time, I'll entertain a motion to, I'll go ahead and request the city attorney read the title of the ordinance.
I will do that, and hopefully I'm got the right distance to the mic. We need to insert into the ordinance the map number that's been selected. So that would be in paragraphs of the ordinance 26, 27, 28. That'll be in 2 places. And then in section 3, entitled District Boundary Map, again, you would insert map 101 into that section. And then for the sequencing, that will be added to Exhibit A to the ordinance, and section 2.70.020 entitled City Council Districts and District Election Sequence. In 2026, the district numbers that should be inserted there will be 1, 3, and 5. And then in 2028, the district numbers would be 2, 4, and 6. And so now I'm going to read the title of the ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacific Grove establishing district-based elections for council members by amending Pacific Grove Municipal Code Title II to add a new chapter 2.70 district-based elections, adopting a district boundary map, and assigning a sequence of elections for the new districts. And now that I've read the title, the appropriate action would be a motion to approve recommendations 5 through 7.
I'll make that motion and I'll make it with the amendments, the oral amendments made on the record currently, or just previously. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
It was a tie.
I had it by 2 seconds.
Okay, we'll go with Rao. Okay, all right. Is everyone clear on the motion? Okay, and we'll take a roll call then.
Mayor Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Rao. Aye. Councilmembers Garfield,
Aye.
Walking Stick,
Aye.
Maduri.
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Toten.
Yeah, so NDC will have an updated map 101 that'll also reflect the election sequencing for your next public hearing, the second reading of your ordinance. So that should be to the city clerk's office this week, if not tomorrow. So again, congratulations, and I hope that we see you again in 2031. I want to thank Councilor Leone for joining us via Zoom tonight as well. So
Thank you, Mr. Tilton. Thank you, Ms. Leone. Congratulations up here for getting this done. And we will now move to 11B, another public hearing, but shouldn't be as long. And I'll recognize the city attorney to speak to 11B.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This subject of this agenda item is a proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 16.40, stopping, standing, and parking by adding Section 16.40, 605, parking permits for volunteers at city-sponsored events. The council may recall that on February 19th of 2025, the City Council was presented with an agenda report with regard to a proposed ordinance to allow for the issuance of parking permits to volunteers who assist at city-sponsored events such as the 4th of July, PG Concourse, Rally, Butterfly Parade, and others. And the City Council gave direction to the city attorney to return with an ordinance to amend Chapter 16.40 to provide for permits to be issued. The language is described in the agenda report and in the ordinance itself. Those permits must be clearly displayed. They're not valid where parking is prohibited, such as if it's restricted to handicap. And finally, that the permit shall be revoked for abuse. The ordinance itself is in the agenda packet. The recommended action is to have your discussion. If you have any, take public comment, and then assuming you wish to proceed, to request that I read the title of the ordinance.
Thank you very much. Go out to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on the providing parking to the volunteers in the city?
Nobody online, Mayor.
Close public comment on this item, bring back to the council, and I'll entertain a motion and a request.
I have a couple of clarifying questions.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Rao.
I'm all for this. I think this is fine. I think we should take care of the volunteers that help with city-sponsored events. My concern is the staff time, and I've already reviewed that with Mr. Mogensen. And I would like to see that the parking permits are issued to a volunteer coordinator who can also be responsible for filling out and collecting the volunteer agreements as well as issuing the parking passes. What I don't want is 100 people. I don't think it's right that 100 people go into the city clerk's office to get a parking pass. I think we can hand 25 out to the Kiwanis, 30 out to the Rotary, and then they can manage that based on how many volunteers. In order to eliminate staff time, as we've already seen, the staff is busy. And so I would encourage us to make that part of the process. And then, my concern is that now that we're going to give out free parking passes, everybody's going to want to park. And where people were carpooling in the past, now they're going to be like, oh, well, I can drive myself. Well, we still would like to encourage carpooling for those volunteers. So just because you have 100 volunteers, I think we need to, cap the parking at, 30% or something, just so that we don't have an extra 70 cars in downtown because everyone's chosen not to carpool. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Garfield?
Yeah, I see that this is for city-sponsored events, and my recollection about the nature of the problem was that it was Marina Motorsports was having trouble during some of the car events, and that would not be covered under this because it's restricted to only city sponsored events. So my question is, where are we getting complaints? Where's the concern? And are we solving that problem by doing this, or are we solving a problem that didn't exist?
Yeah, but I'm going to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Emilio now.
Yeah, I did not have a presentation on this since we had approved it already on a prior item, but the Traffic Commission is the one that put this together to bring it to the council member representative, which was me. And they're saying just exactly what it says, that they're not, there's only several volunteers at each event, and they just were getting ticketed. No fault of the police department or anything, but the Traffic Commission felt that they should volunteers for special events, and they which was named by Mr. Perrick. They should get that. That was the extent of it. It wasn't anything where they were going to have 200 people at the PG Concours rally or the butterfly parade. So that's what there was concern about on the Traffic Commission, and we approved it already. So I would like to make a motion.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
But before we do that, you might want to ask me to read the title of the ordinance.
I have finished, but I will.
I was waiting.
Yeah, go ahead and read the title.
I'll be glad to. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacific Grove, amending Chapter 16.40, stopping, standing, and parking by adding Section 16.40.605, parking permits for volunteers at city-sponsored events. And the motion that you can make is to approve the recommendations 2 through 4.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve section 2 through 4.
Okay, there's a motion to approve recommendations 2 through 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Walking Stick. Okay, so now any further discussion on this? McDonald or Garfield, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to vote no on this one for 2 reasons. One, I think limiting the number of volunteer stickers is a reasonable suggestion, and handing them off to the event coordinator rather than having the city be doing it is a necessary addition that will say, here's your 25 Rotary, you just decide who gets them. And the third thing is that I'm not sure that limiting this to city-sponsored events would be the best course of action.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. So my understanding is that what we're voting on is the ordinance that we already asked staff to come back with. So can council have a say in recommendations to the city manager and how to manage the problem that's independent? Like would what these suggestions are, which are good suggestions, would that need to be in the ordinance, or is that something that the ordinance then allows the city manager to come up with a process to handle?
And the answer is the last thing you said, that the ordinance will state that the give authorization for the issuance of the permits, but the city manager would deal with the procedural issues of how to do that, how many to issue, whether to issue them directly to the volunteer or to a sponsoring or volunteer organization. That's all procedure, if you will, that the city manager would be able to address. And he's sitting next to me, so I assume he's heard your comments and can take whatever action he feels are appropriate.
Yes, Councilmember Garfield?
And it doesn't address the issue of city-sponsored events. That's not up to his discretion to choose. This says city-sponsored events, doesn't it? Or it names them.
Councilmember, if I could address that quickly, I believe the one you're talking about is the little car show. The Marina
I'm
Boat
not sure
Sports.
which car show it is, but my understanding is that it was one of the car shows
Yeah.
that had the biggest problems, and this wouldn't be. one
So
of them.
to clarify, the little car show is a city sponsored event. We also do still provide parking permits for if people want to pay for those. So the ones that are not city sponsored events, they still do have the option to pay for the parking pass as well. So I think that for the little car show, we're covered on that one. But in
And that was
terms
the
of,
source of the problem. That was the
yeah,
major concern raised and that started this ball rolling.
to my understanding, I guess I'll look at the Councilmember Emilio. He hit the direct contact.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Morgan. So what was the question again?
The little car show that's Marina Motorsports. Is that correct?
The little car show is downtown Cedar Grove, so the volunteers down there would be just banning some, making sure that the traffic does not go into the lighthouse area. But I think the ordinance is pretty clear that the city manager or designee shall issue the permit, and that would be the discretion of the city manager or designee.
Yeah, just I'll make a comment. I think it does include the little car show. It just doesn't state it exactly, and that's probably where the confusion lies. But it's fine. It's in the language. I'm reading it here. So at this point, I'll take a roll call vote unless there's any other discussion. Councilman Walkingstick.
Actually, I'd like to explain my position on why I seconded this.
Okay.
I feel that as a city policy for addressing city events to facilitate and help city volunteers who are trying to help us, I think this is a good reward system, or at least a good way of helping to facilitate city volunteers to help the city. That's what this covers. If we have other events that other people are facilitating, other organizations are putting on, that's their responsibility. And I don't feel a need to create policy on their behalf right now. Right now, I'm trying to help city volunteers. That's my goal with this. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmember Walkingstick,
Aye.
Councilmember Garfield.
Aye.
Was that aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Rao? Aye. Paduri?
Aye.
McDonald?
Aye.
Mayor Smith?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Excellent. All right, we're moving right along now. 11C. This is the public hearing to amend the city fee schedule. And I will recognize Mr. Marsh.
Good evening. Good evening, fellow council members. Tonight, as you know, in September, we initially brought the fee schedule to the council and they adopted our current fee schedule that's in place. It's designed to be in accordance with our current policy. But since the adoption of the schedule, staff's come and worked with me and the city manager, and we're recommending a few small minor changes to the policy. And let me just go over this briefly. So the first one, it's in community development. This is basically aligning the commercial re-roof fee with the residential re-roof fee, so they're both the same amount at $670. The second item is to basically revise the fees for different types of encroachment permits to reflect a lower revised estimate for some administrative and inspection costs. So it results in a reduction of these fees from about $650 to $414. The third thing is one of our processor for credit card fees for community development, they actually have now a lower fee. So instead of it being 4% of the credit card amount, it's 3.5%. So we wanted to update our fee schedule to reflect that change. With the recent park, basically sidewalk dining permit program, we wanted to just kind of clarify that the parklet permit fees, they also apply to the sidewalk dining permits as well too. And continuing forward. Sorry about that. Okay. Number 5 is basically removing the cost of a public works inspector from a couple of different fees. One is basically the residential zoning records report and the sewer lateral report. Basically reducing these fees to about $490 and $326. The 6 is kind of just a formality. We've had this in place for a number of years, but we're extending the 30% discount on the water entitlement price on the master fee schedule through June 30th, 2025. It was kind of on it. We hadn't noted it, but basically we were just continuing our existing policy. Number 7 relates to cemetery. Basically, staff re-looked at one of the fees and determined it was a little bit actually out of line. It wasn't reflecting our true actual cost. So there's one item on there we're proposing to change. This is for the open and closing of double garden crypt, the first opening. So increasing that amount from $1,200 to about $2,000 to reflect our actual cost that we incur in performing that service. And the last thing is just for recreation, just kind of clarifying and adjusting a couple of different items, that the facility rental fees are basically per day for picnic facility reservations, and the other facility rental fees are on a per hour basis. That the fee for recreational swimming at Lovers Point is for 2 hours. And then again, just to reflect our actual cost, adjusting the recreation trail rental fee per hour for over 100 persons to be $332 in line with the actual staff time and costs incurred. And with that, I'm recommending that the council adopt a resolution to modify the city's 24-25 revised master fee schedule, and be happy to answer any questions. Staff's here as well too, if there are any detailed questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Marsh, for going through all that. We're going to take out public comment briefly here. Anybody want to approach the fee schedule changes?
Nobody online either, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for discussion of the item. Councilmember Rock.
So if extending the 30% discount to the water entitlement price through June 30th, 2025. Now, allegedly in December or November, we're going to be online with additional water, and it still has yet to figure out what that's going to be. Do we want to just make this through the end of the year, and then hopefully we can just be done with it if that's the way it shakes out, or do we want to revisit it again in June? I mean,
Are you talking about number 6?
I'm talking about number 6.
Mr. Marsh, can you speak to 6? I think she's referring to the Monterey One Water project.
Thank you. Let me clarify that. So the idea, we've had that discount in place for a number of fiscal years. And right, we were just proposing to align it with, in essence, the end of our current fiscal year. Council, however, could extend it for a longer period of time. I mean, Matt, I don't see any issues with that. Do you?
I was going to just quickly state that I believe it could be 2 separate sources of water, though, but you'd be mixing with that. So this is pertaining to our recycled water credit. And the new water supply would be a different source.
Yeah, I think we're I would think we keep in 6 for tonight. All right. And anyone else wishing to comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion at this point if no one else wishes to comment. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if this is the time, I'm familiar with the benches because this has come up on my first term. Do we talk about the benches on this particular thing, or do we deal with that later?
And I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what you mean by benches. So,
the memorial benches. I'm sorry.
The memorial benches. I think they were part of the whole fee schedule that was adopted back in September. What we're going to be doing is in April, I think it's in May, we'll be bringing back to the board the annual fee update. Most of them will just be cost of living adjustments. So we'll have that in there at that
Okay,
time.
thank you very much.
Councilman Pedro, I see him up there. Hand up.
Thank you. I just had a suggestion for the future. I think it will be beneficial for the council to understand when we're making these fee adjustments, higher or lower, what are the implications to current revenue for the fiscal year or for the following fiscal year? Because it seems like some of these, like the credit card processing fee, like how much are we losing or gaining through that exercise? What if it changes again next year? Are we making that change again? And how much staff time does it take to make that change and go through the motions with everything there? So just calling that out, but it'll be helpful to provide some more information in the future. But I'm supportive of the agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great comment. I'll entertain a motion at this time to adopt the resolution, or I'll make it myself if I don't hear it.
I can make a.
Okay, Councilman McDonald.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a resolution to adopt the fee schedule as proposed. Is that
Yes, that's great.
Second.
She beats to the punch over Al on the second. Just by a second there. And I'm just gonna make one comment. I'm sensitive to Councilmember Peduri's comment. I think that's a great comment. I am also sensitive to people trying to do things with their property and paying a lot of fees. And over the years, I've taken a lot of feedback on that particular point. So I think this is the right thing to do right now. And we get to revisit everything with the budget cycle. So we will be doing all of that.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's take a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald? Councilmember Rao? Aye. Councilmember Garfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Walkenstick?
Aye.
3.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia?
Aye.
Mayor Smith?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Another unanimous vote tonight. Okay, we're moving on to 11D. This is the fiscal year 24-25 mid-year budget modifications and related ordinance, and we will hear from Mr. Marsh again.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, tonight is basically our annual mid-cycle update, or for the second quarter of fiscal year 24-25. So as just to kind of remind council, when we adopted the budget for fiscal year 24-25, we really looked at pretty much conservative growth for the city. One of the biggest goals for the city is to kind of maintain its current 35% reserve policy. This also accounts for, we've now adjusted the budget to reflect the new program manager in the city manager's department, kind of reflecting some transfer of funds within the departments. But it's important to know for council that when the 5-year forecast was adopted as part of the adopted budget, it shows continuing drops in fund balances. So it's something we need to continue to monitor. One of the things we've talked about as well too is coming before the board during the next couple of months is proposing some potential changes in reserve policies as well too. So we'll be coming back with a lot more detail on that. So basically, bottom line, the good news is we are still projecting to be, meeting the 35% reserve target for the current fiscal year. And we are proposing some adjustments that we'll talk about in just a minute as well too, along with a number of capital project carryover that we'll talk about a little bit as well. So overall, in the general fund, obviously this is by far the city's biggest fund. Revenues are basically projected overall to meet budget currently right now. Our property taxes, utility user taxes, and the water entitlement rights are all kind of coming in a little bit higher than we initially projected, which is good. Development fees can vary, as you know, a lot from year to year. Currently, right now, our construction permits and the plan check fees, they're projected to be a little bit lower than initial projections. On the expense side, we're projecting right now to be a little bit under budget. We've had some vacancies in admin services, community development. We've filled, the good news is the vacancies in admin services. We're addressing those in community development right now and public works. So kind of with these and some other cost savings, we're expecting the general fund to be a little bit under budget this year. We are proposing some additional adjustments. I'll kind of just briefly go over these. The biggest amount, as you can see, is for building contract services. So let me just explain that. I'll explain actually all these on the next slide. The other big ones, we're looking to replace additional police car. We're looking, Public Works and the city manager are recommending some additional repairs and capital projects funded by the general fund. And we're looking to do some additional part-time staffing in recreation as well too. So to kind of talk about these just a little bit, the police car, it's basically reached the end of its life. We really, strive to, get maximum use out of our vehicles. The current vehicle has over 100,000 miles on it. We've had it for over 10 years. Police vehicles, they're used very, hard. Commend the police department really hard for, balancing their cars and getting the most that they can out of them. But it's definitely past its useful life at this point. The contract services, the way it works sometimes with timing is that this relates to the hotel. So we actually got the permit fees last year, but due to the timing on the review of the hotel, that's still taking place this year. So we're kind of doing the budget adjustment to fund the needed, completion for the review of the hotel. Library, as you know, lots of things going on at the library. So libraries, they're requesting kind of an add-on. We have a 3/4 administrative analyst right now for the library. We're proposing to take that to a full-time position to really provide additional support to enhance the library website, data collection that they do, and providing a lot of support for the library board and the commission as well. Public Works, as we've talked about, really these were kind of deemed a lot of high priority projects by the city manager, and just to address needs that have come up recently for the city. Part-time staff, we've really detailed it in the staff report, but the overall thing is, we've good news. We've had increased number of offerings, increased number of registrants, and also that we've partnered with the school district as well too with some programs. So this is helping to kind of offset a lot of those additional recreation program activities, but a lot of it's being offset by the reimbursements from the school district, which is really good. Capital projects roll over. Some of you may or may not be used to this. So the idea is capital projects typically go over a multi-year cycle. It's kind of hard to know exactly when they're going to occur, but the main thing is you always want to make sure you have funding for those. So that's basically what we're doing is we're just kind of moving the funding with the actual, timing of the projects. The good news is you're going to, as you see in the staff report, there are a number of capital project carryovers that we have, but 62% of those projects are already done, which is really good. So kudos again, the Public Works staff. They've been working really hard on getting these a lot done. This is a very standard practice that we do. In fact, I've done it in my last few agencies as well too. Just make sure that you're having a good financial monitoring of your different capital projects. And the the staff report itself talks about the impact to our various city funds. These are a listing of the various projects. The first page, as you can see, the good news, they're all complete, which is really great. The second page, they've made some substantial progress on, or they're in, the initial parts of development as well too. So the total rollovers, it is a significant amount. It's over $6 million. But the good news, these are basically mostly all special and restricted funds or outside of the general fund. And with that, recommendation would be to kind of a 4-part process. As you know, we have to do a kind of a 2-part approval for the, oh, actually, no, this is the, oh, I forgot about that. Anyway, the first step would be to request the city attorney to read the title. I think I got this one wrong. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the next one with the fee one. Sorry. Yes. So to request the city attorney to request the, read the title of the ordinance. So I don't know if you want to do that now or wait till the end. A motion to waive the further reading of the ordinance, introduce and hold the first reading of an ordinance amending the operating and capital budget for the fiscal year 24-25, and directed that the publication of the ordinance will be satisfied by the publication of a summary approved by the city attorney. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Apologize for this a little bit. It's a little different from what I've done in my prior places. So thanks for your patience.
Oh, you're fine. Fine. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Yeah, we just have to do everything as an ordinance. It's just maybe like an extra complicated. Don't worry. So we'll take it out to the public for a comment. Ms. Chiani, I see her hand up.
There's the unmute button. Thank you. So my question is just about the additional building contract services related to building review services related to construction of a new hotel in the city, which are being funded by building permit fees collected in the prior fiscal year. So are we talking about the HEC hotel there? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't answer right yet. Okay, yeah, so if so, is that currently going through permit review? Because it is interesting that there's activity there in the parking lot, a lot of big trucks and big equipment. And the what do you call it? Coastal Commission staff has said that they don't have a coastal development permit yet from the Coastal Commission. So I would just wanted clarification on what we're reviewing. Thank you.
Thank you. In chambers, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Alicia Perez, the Chair of the Library Advisory Board. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to encourage the council to approve those additional funds to complete the ADA assessment. That assessment is a really important step in making sure that our public library is fully accessible to anybody who needs or enjoys their services. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Anyone else online? Sandra?
No further hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Bring it back to the council on this item. Very important point that Mr. Marsh made is that some of these items are on the CIP and on separate line items, not on the general fund. I think that's a huge point for this particular item, but any council member wishing to comment, ask questions, and discuss.
I think.
Oh, Councilmember McDonald. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to clarify the question that was asked, this is for the downtown hotel, not for the ATC,
That's
correct?
exactly correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was addressing the comment. Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
great. Councilmember Garfield?
Yeah, I want to point out the $20,000 for the Chautauqua Hall Historic Federal Register to complete that application process. And I think it's a really good thing to have in here. It signals the city's commitment to Chautauqua Hall, and looking forward to what else comes next. It's also an investment because being on the National Historic Register helps the grant proposals that people are writing so that we can get some funding for Chautauqua Hall. So it's an investment in future revenue, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Peduri. I see him up there.
Thank you. Mr. Marsh, I just had a quick couple of questions. Maybe the 5-year projection, you said it's declining, is projected to is a decrease over the remaining 4 fiscal years. As I was wondering if it accounts for the increase in revenues from the new hotel that's going to come in.
Yeah, and that's a great question. No, it does not. So basically, the 5-year forecast was done by my predecessor. Basically, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with it, and we'll be updating it, for the board when we go in May. She took a very good approach, which I totally agree with. Is until you basically get a year's worth of revenues, you don't count it in your budget. So neither any potential ATP project or the current downtown is not in there. Once it's up for a year, one of the things we have to kind of balance is to see if there's any potential effect on the other hotels, in the city, which there could be. So we really have to kind of wait a full year before we put it in, at any future budgets.
Okay, understood. And the second, it's probably somewhat related, or maybe not, but I know we hired an external auditor more recently, I would say. So when is the next audit coming up with the new auditor?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we actually had it planned for tonight, but obviously just because we had a very busy workload tonight, it's scheduled for the 19th. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sorry, Councilmember Rao was first. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I do agree that the library staffing needs to be increased. My question, Mr. Mogensen and I had a conversation about it. the elevator repairs at the youth center, is that for a brand new elevator?
Councilmember, I can speak on a high level of that, and if you want more details, Director Go is here with us as well. But that the work that we're doing there to the elevators to modernize the system, I guess it's the electronics and all the internal components need to be replaced.
Okay.
But the hardware itself, the elevator structure, is not being replaced.
Okay. So this is basically for a system upgrade? Okay. And the only thing that I'm going to say here, and then we'll talk about this during the budgeting and the 5-year plan that we've got for infrastructure, is that it's not just enough to say that we care about the environment and then not do anything about it. So from my perspective, and I get that technology hasn't caught up yet to the police force, but we need to seriously look at the infrastructure of the city. We need to look at alternative fuels. And maybe we can't start with the police force, but we can start with the city trucks and cars as they come due. I mean, we really should be leading the peninsula on alternate fuel, solar, you know, in our buildings with a backup and all of those things. And so I would say, you know, that 85,000's a little big of a pill to swallow, but I'll do it. But we really need to get our mind right about how we're going to manage the city moving forward with new technology and new energy.
Thank you for that comment. Anyone? Councilman Walkingston? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I insist. Is that yeah? Okay.
Arm wrestle. A couple of things, I noticed, you have the recreation board park inventory, and maybe, you can explain that. What do we mean by recreation park inventory? Because I know the, Recreation Commission was concerned about that. I'm just curious what inventory are we doing? Or Dr. Go's going to come through here.
Great, Dan, thanks.
Park inventory. Okay.
Councilmember Emilio, thank you guys also for having me here tonight. This is actually when the Recreation Board went through a couple years and they did recommendations for improvements at all of the parks, picnic tables, some fence repairs, gate repairs, so on and so forth. These are carryover funds that were basically left over after we completed that work. It doesn't have to do with the park and open space plan that the Recreation Board was discussing at their last meeting. This is a completely separate item.
Separate item.
Yeah, this is just a carry forward of funding. And at the end of this year, that project will more than likely be closed out.
Okay. We knew we were talking about what they had talked about. I thought this was one of them, but that's okay.
No,
I
sir.
understand.
That's correct.
Mr. Go. The other question is this is only a mid-year, and then we're going to make any adjustments on the next cycle. Am I correct?
So what we'll do, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So just kind of, because we have some new board members, typically what we do quarterly reports. So the way it works is, in essence, we do them in November. And then this one we waited a little bit. Normally we would have done it like in February in essence, but we like to do the second quarter a little bit later to kind of work with staff on mid-year adjustments. But then you'll see a third quarter report in May. And then the fourth quarter report will be in August, as well too. That's kind of like a preliminary year-end report. So the third quarter report will also work with staff. If there might be a minor adjustment, but typically the mid-year report is where we have the significant adjustments.
I see. What if we, as a council member, wanted to make an adjustment on something or a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, obviously, work with the city manager on that, and then we can work together to present something to the board for consideration.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Councilmember Walkingston.
Oh, thank you very much. Couple of things. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you, Fred, and your Administrative Services Division for your recent award. We now have an award-winning Administrative Services Director and department, and you're very valuable. Thank you so much. That speaks highly of your work and your department's work.
Well, yeah, I really want to, we've gone through a lot, a lot of, we've had some new staff turnover and, we've had some wonderful additions to our staff. And yeah, I forgot about this, but yeah, we just recently won, and I have to give credit to my predecessor as well too, the award from CSFMO for our budget for 24-25. So really congratulations to the council's support as well too for that as well too. It just shows the high quality work, that we do here. And we just recently submitted it, and you'll see this when we come on the 19th, but we submitted it for our financial report, and what you'll see a new one report as well too. It's called a popular annual financial report, because what we're actually trying to get for this coming year is what's called a triple crown. So that's like when you get awards in 3 different areas. So we're working to get that as well too. So yeah, we really pride a lot on financial transparency. And again, I really give my staff a lot of credit. They do a great job, and just working with the departments, they're really very supportive of us as well too. So thank you. I
That's
appreciate it.
awesome. Pulling for the Triple Crown. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, addressing a couple of things directly that have come up. Councilmember Rao, I'm all for, I'm with you on alternative energy and orienting our city towards alternative fuel, alternative energy, and being a leader on the peninsula and taking steps forward. Specific to police vehicle replacement, I know, or I'm under the understanding that it gets more complicated, specifically with implementations of Teslas. They've had limited space inside the.
That's no problem. I'm going to support us buying a Tesla
Oh.
anyway.
But anyway, the issue has been lack of space inside. So alternative electric vehicles. The problem has been limited space on the inside. They need to kit the vehicles out. So I think specifically with police vehicles, that would really be worthy of its own conversation in partnership with the city and police department and pursuing that. Okay. Second of all, the elevator repairs, I believe that's all ADA. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's an ADA requirement that we're pursuing that, right?
That would be a primary purpose, yeah.
Okay, so we got that on record
That'll
now.
be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, I am very much in favor of this. We got to do all these things. We've been talking about police vehicles for years, and that's been an issue. So I think, yeah, it's its own discussion. I agree. And I remember we approved one of these and we talked about this, and then we ended up with the police car. And in this case, it sounds like that car is needing to be replaced. But as far as the other vehicles in the fleet, yeah, I could see moving to a Tesla-like vehicle in the future. And so yes, I think that would be a great idea. And a lot of these, again, are out of different budgets, and so it's a cleanup, and it needs to be done so we can continue these projects. And so at this point, I would entertain a motion for the recommendation. The title of the ordinance first.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, but I'll have the city attorney read the title of the ordinance.
Yes, I certainly will. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacific Grove, amending the operating and capital projects budget for fiscal year 24-25, and then your motion can be recommendations 2 through 4.
Recommendations 2 through 4.
Okay, we have motion and a second by Rao for the recommended action tonight. Any further discussion up here? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Motion by
Amelia.
Emilio. Okay, that's what I thought.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio? Councilmember Rao? Councilmembers McDonald?
Aye.
Aduri?
Aye.
Walking Stick?
Aye.
Garfield?
Aye.
And Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Marsh. Great job. And congratulations to the finance department again. Triple crown. Let's go. Okay. Excellent, excellent. So now we are at our final item for the evening. This is our selection of core areas of focus. And Mr. Peralt, our former interim city manager, is online and going to assist us with this item.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, hopefully you can hear me okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing me to come to you remotely tonight. And I'd like to ask the city clerk if she wouldn't mind sharing that Word document that I sent her earlier today. As the council has already, as the council may understand, you've already started the process for your work plan development for the coming year. And what you've done thus far is that you've heard a status of the existing work plan. You've also received a report on some of the challenges facing the staff and the city and opportunities. And just recently, compliments to Mr. Marsh, you got a fiscal update. So you're basically in a position to be able to take the next step, which is actually looking and citing the 4 to 5 areas you might want to concentrate or focus areas, as I've called them, for the next step in your work plan development. And as you'll recall from last year, you had for the last work plan, you had four focus areas. Those included recreation services, infrastructure, in environmental stewardship, and affordable housing. You obviously at this point can continue with those same 4 areas of focus. But based on my discussion with staff and department heads, as well as city council, I'm offering some suggestions that you may want to think about for your areas of focus for the coming 2-year budget cycle. Those would include the community services. And as you'll note there, instead of just recreation, it's a broader range of resident quality of life improvements. Environmental stewardship, this is similar to the focus area that was on your last work plan. Another suggestion is economic development. There seems to be a lot of interest in focusing on economic development over the next budget cycle. Community development, again, this sort of replaces affordable housing and deals. It's a little bit broader than just affordable housing, as there may be other community development improvements that you may want to move forward on. And the final one I was going to offer is fiscal sustainability. Even with Mr. Marsh's presentation and with the council discussion, we heard about the need to maybe revise the reserve policies, begin dealing with things like equipment replacement, et cetera. So those are some very important areas. I would also suggest that maybe another area you should be consider retaining is absolutely infrastructure. So having said that, I would like to facilitate a discussion on the selection of the focus areas. And I suggest that, we can proceed however you would like, Mr. Mayor, but I would suggest that basically we take a survey of the council membership and determine what those 4 or 5 focus areas for each council member are. I would suggest, again, to make sure that you limit it to no more than 5, but preferably 4 focus areas. Again, keeping in mind the need to not overtax the delivery system. So with that, I'll answer any questions on this first part. Following this part, we would proceed with the direction on actual goal statement development. Are there any questions of me at this point?
The presentation, we're going to take out to the public comment. Bob. Okay. We'll take public comment, and what we're talking about is, this is our focus areas. We haven't developed our goals yet. That will be the next step
Right.
at a subsequent session of council, or will be taken up at a subsequent session, but we will be developing those outside of these doors. So this will be in relation to the focus areas presented tonight. So I'll recognize Ms. Chiani first.
Thank you. So I'm going to roll it together, but in keeping with Pacific Grove's unique history of protecting wildlife and natural habitat, I urge council to adopt environmental stewardship as a core area of focus, continuing an essential focus area for the last 2 years and building on it. Many of the current milestones and implementing actions are either not complete or barely started. Briefly, the climate action plan is now being prepared by a consultant, and that's great. Second, the final review of the Title 12 ordinance revisions at BNRC was in August of 2024, over 6 months ago, but the revisions have not yet been brought to council, including some important BNRC recommendations and corrections that staff rejected. 3, an updated long-term George Washington Park management plan still needs to be completed, and the Public Works Director told the community that's not happening anytime soon at the February 19th meeting, I believe. 4, very importantly, implementation of the wildlife protection ordinances and local coastal program amendments as recommended by City Council's Coastal Wildlife Protection Subcommittee and approved by Council in 2022 must be completed to make needed coastal and city-wide wildlife protection enforceable. Implementation has been long delayed due to multiple staffing changes and a loss of connection between staff and community members who understand the subcommittee's 28 proposed LCP amendments and corrections. It would be a huge loss not to follow through on the recommendations of the Coastal Wildlife Protection Advisory Committee convened by former Mayor Peak in 2019 and consisting of local scientific and natural resource experts who volunteered their time to identify threats to coastal wildlife and develop scientifically based recommendations to help PG's fragile coastal wildlife thrive for years to come. And building on the current environmental stewardship goal area could be adoption of something similar to a recommendation in the recent organizational diagnostic report, separating the Recreation Department from Public Works, but instead creating a Parks and Recreation Department with someone like the Environmental Programs Manager, perhaps working together with a new city forester to manage natural resources in city parks, with Recreation Manager overseeing the recreational aspects of city parks. I hope that you will adopt that goal area, that focus area, but also, boy, the Community Development Department really needs help, and historic preservation is suffering, for one thing, as a result of the lack of the staff there. Thank you very much.
No further hands, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the council. I'm going to make just one preliminary comment here, and then I'll recognize council members on this. This is really important, I think, to set this up right. And I think that while we have 6 on this list that and there could be others, I'm sure, that others come up with that aren't on this list. This is a recommended list by Mr. Peralt. But my take on this is, even if we don't, let's say we don't have a focus area of, for instance, for me, it would be community services and potentially economic development would be the ones that are, for me, are not in my top 4. And even if we don't select those 2 as focus areas tonight, I don't think that means you can't still make policy within those areas in the next 2 years or a year and 10 months. I don't think that precludes policy. I just think that what we're trying to do is develop a work plan that is focused
and that is prioritized. And I think it was set up here, actually, if everything's a priority, nothing is. So I like that line. I think that's a really insightful comment. And so for me, I could see we're going to have to obviously do things to improve economic development no matter what. And we're going to have to do community services because that's part of our actual charge as a city. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And I'll speak to those individual goal areas as well, but I want to hear from other people. That I just wanted to kind of set the discussion tone with those thoughts. That's just the way I'm thinking about it. And then, of course, if anyone may hear from some other areas as well, so that we can talk about all of them at that point. Okay, I'll go ahead and recognize someone else. Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking back on the staff report or the staff review that we reviewed last week or the week before, infrastructure played a big part of that. We do not have a long-term infrastructure plan. And I think that is something that we continue to pay for year after year. And I would like to see a 5-year infrastructure plan that's probably going to have to, I think of the sidewalk plan, it's probably going to be a 20-year plan because there's no way that we have the money to repair all of the sidewalks in the next 2 years or make sidewalks where there's no sidewalks there. We just don't, have the funds, but we do need to plan for that, just like we need to plan for our equipment as it becomes outdated. So I would like to see infrastructure added to this because I think it's something that's critically important to the city. And in part of that infrastructure is also updating our buildings and our facilities and our vehicles to take advantage of, alternate fuels.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I believe infrastructure is on the suggested focus areas. So you're right there. And that's probably my number one. So go ahead. Who's next? Councilwoman McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. So the way I did this is I kind of started by looking at a combination of our prior goals, because as Ms. Chiani mentioned, there are several of those that are still in progress. But I also looked at the work plan provided to us by the city manager, which I really appreciated because one of the goals of a city is to have city working on what the council deems important. And so I think that definitely infrastructure is a key one. Environmental stewardship, there were several on that list that we're still working on there. And an important one to most of our community members as well. It's interesting because community services was recreation before, and it's one of those things we'll always do, but we've actually pretty much finished the projects and we don't have anything left on the work plan for that currently, which is great because that means we've accomplished a lot in the last couple of years. For economic development, there are a few that could fall there. I don't know if it's something that we're sort of automatically doing anything, so we'll have to decide if we need a policy. The interesting thing is I looked at a lot of the projects that are going on that didn't fit into those categories, but didn't quite fit infrastructure, but maybe are close to that. And it's something called process and policy improvements. And I think this really got to what we talked about at our last council meeting. We talked about the importance of investing now in building our systems that will facilitate staff and being more effective and more efficient so they can better serve our community. So in particular, we had 3, just as an example, because we're not picking individual goals now, but to kind of get to why I'm suggesting we may want this category if we don't want to collapse it and keep infrastructure more for building type stuff, is we have CIP, project efficiencies review, and that's a really important one for improving our city processes. Committee commission city organizational assessment, another really good one for increasing city effectiveness, and that of course affects all the services we provide to the community. The city organizational assessment, and then I think the IT infrastructure kind of overlaps with this because that helps the entire process of how the city runs, although it sort of falls under infrastructure too. So if we didn't have this category, so I just propose that probably infrastructure, maybe a separate or a subcategory of this kind of process policy improvements, because I think that'll take us where we want to go with supporting the city staff and supporting us in the community in our goals. And then the environmental stewardship and community development is actually something we'll be needing to do anyway. We do have some key like ADU things and other affordable housing requirements that will need to be met. So we probably do need to still keep a focus on that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to? Councilmember Walking Stick, of course.
Thank you. I've noticed a good deal of overlap in a lot of our conversation. That seems to be a recurring theme with me. That's the first thing that comes out of my mouth when we talk about this. But seriously, I'm seeing one potential focus area as city development. We've got community development, economic development. I see a city development focus area emerging as well, which incorporates the fiscal sustainability that's been brought up and recommended. And it helps to support the city in its efforts for its modernization, its analysis of city function and organization, and trying to realize their goals of improving city function. So there's a lot involved in that. And I see that now as one of our big catches that we could do this year. We could improve the city's function itself, and that helps everything else with the community. Every interaction they have with the city, all of the functions that the city does, improve. We have the opportunity to improve that across the board, and that's something that we'll get to carry forward, period. Within that, we can set up fiscal sustainability so that we can then have a replacement fund. We get visibility on what our replacement is going to look like over time. And then I also like Councilmember Rao's point that we should also have that same sort of visibility over our infrastructure. So if we can have a view on what our replacement on our infrastructure, or what our needed upgrades would be around the entirety of our city, and we can kind of stage that out over the next period of decades, that helps us have a long view on what our needs are going to be. Infrastructure is another one of my big ones. Environmental stewardship, of course. Community development, and my number 5 is economic development. The last thing I wanted to say was that when actually thinking about goals, when thinking about CIPs, policies, goals, I've seen a bunch of opportunities for us to address multiple focus areas simultaneously with some of these solutions. And I kind of see those as our bright spots where we are able to realize the most benefit for the least amount of energy and investment. You know, if we're able to accomplish many focus areas with a particular goal or a particular CIP or effort, that really starts to prioritize that particular policy or CIP or whatever for me. So that's where I'm at. City development, infrastructure, environmental stewardship, community development, my top 4. Economic development is my number 5.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Perry.
Thank you, Mayor. I think at the end of the day, we're going to tackle all of these topics. And I don't have a certain priority, but I just wanted to make things simple here with respect to providing some direction to Mr. Perrault. So I just had a combined view here to say we should focus on infrastructure and technology. We should focus on fiscal and environmental stewardship. And then thirdly, we should focus on community services and development. That way it's like kind of like a combination of things, but addresses everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garfield.
Thank you. And I appreciate the effort to kind of get us consolidated as opposed to enlarging. And I think when we get to writing our goals, our suggested goals, we'll see that some of the areas where one person thinks it belongs one place, another person thinks it belongs another place, that'll sort out as we're doing our goals. When I was looking at these, I was looking at goals and the definition of goal where you're doing something proactively, and by saying you're going to do it, you're also stating you're not going to do the opposite. And okay, let me just give you my example. it's like in corporations, when you say quality is going to have its own department, it doesn't work as well as when everybody does quality in their own departments. And I look at environmental stewardship the same way. Having it as a separate focus in some sense makes it over there. And I like the idea of seeing it as part of our everyday life. So I put it under community services to improve quality of life, which includes environmental care and the responsiveness of the city to its citizens. For instance, a very practical model would be, how hard is it to get a business license? That's a stickler for some people, and it might be that that's an improvement of their quality of life. So that's one thing under community services. I saw fiscal sustainability as including revenue enhancement, i.e. economic development, perhaps just from economic development, and secondarily looking at cost containment. So that would be the two different things under fiscal sustainability, doing things that are in the long run more economical, which also includes financial planning, multi-year financial planning. I agree that infrastructure is something we just keep kicking down the road. And putting it first and foremost is, figuring out what we need to do to take care of the assets the city has. Sidewalks, boring stuff, buildings, getting them back up to where they should be if we hadn't been deferring maintenance for so long. Under community development, I see it as an opportunity to encourage the city of the future, a city that includes affordable housing, that includes removing barriers to all sorts of housing, and other things that we need to develop as a city of what we're going to be in 30 years. So as I said, I'm divided on the issue of whether environmental stewardship should be in everything, or we want it to underscore our dedication to it by putting it as a separate one. But my four are community services, fiscal sustainability, infrastructure, and community development.
Can you say that again? So a little slower for me.
So I'm debating and open to discussion on where environmental stewardship lies. But the four that I have is community services to improve quality of life. That's organizational responsiveness, that's environmental care, that's how well we do our work. The second one is fiscal sustainability, and that would be revenue enhancement and cost control. The third is infrastructure, is taking care of deferred maintenance and knowing how to get our buildings and our streets and our lighting up to speed, up to where they should be. And the fourth is community development, which encourages the growth of a community we want ourselves to be. And that includes affordable housing, that includes access to all sorts of things. But those are my four.
Okay, great.
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia. Thank you, Mayor. I would first like to say, if we're going to come up with goals, or myself, if I'm going to be coming up with goals, I want to make sure that the staff would be able to reach those goals. That's the key. You can come up with a lot of goals, and then all of a sudden it becomes so wide that the staff can't handle it. And you've seen the report that we're short on staff, including everything. So I'm going to make mine short and sweet, since it's getting a little bit on the later side, but I'm of course on physical sustainability that deals with unfunded liabilities. In my opinion, I also would suggest, just for myself, I'm probably going to look at tier 1, meaning that's my number 1 goal. Tier 2 is sort of the second part of my goals. But in general, we've already said infrastructure is a given, and I agree with that. And economic development and community development. That's where I stand, and a little bit of the community services. So, but again, if I'm going to be coming up with some goals, I want to make sure the staff, it's realistic for the staff that they can handle it too. And I would check with Mr. Mogensen.
Okay, I'm gonna give my 4 then for now, and then we can see how we're gonna wrangle this. It's pretty, there's a lot of overlap, but. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, in any event, I'm just gonna give my 4 and my reasons for doing it. I kind of did it backwards, but I wanted to share that thought. My number 1 is infrastructure, and that would be technological infrastructure as well as physical, the buildings, the streets, and the sidewalks. And that would also include things like complete streets, without going too far into goals, but those are the kind of things I see, the themes in that particular one. And the second would be fiscal sustainability. This would include the revision to reserve policies that are more consistent with other cities, and using the monies that we do have in order to improve the community. And secondly, the dealing with the UAL, the unfunded liability, is to me an extremely important thing for this 2 years. And we can do something to get started on that and not kick the can down the road, so to speak. That's 2. And then 3 for me would be community development, and including meeting our arena goals for housing and dealing with our housing issues. Because I think that's unavoidable. That's unavoidable in this particular timeline that we're in, dealing with the housing element, and also other development considerations within the community. I like this one, as opposed to the affordable housing goal from last time. I think this is more of an achievable goal because it's a little broader and gives us a little more room leeway to work on to get more housing, I think, is what we need to get to. That's for some, in some fashion or manner. And then I believe environmental stewardship has to be the 4th, because we live in here in Pacific Grove in a beautiful community. We've committed to protecting the environment, and we have a lot of irons in the fire in that regard. We have plans and kind of ongoing different plans that have never kind of been put together, and I think we might have the ability to do that this time around. And we're going to have some new staff members, and we're going to have some synergies going on in relation to our various natural assets that we have in the community and things going on. So I do think this is a good time to continue with that focus. And again, these are focus areas. So then those are my 4. And then with relation to community services, there were a couple people that said community development and services. The only thing that I'm thinking about with community services is that we did achieve the recreation goals as was stated by Councilmember McDonald. And one of the reasons that we were able to do that, what I think, in my opinion, was that we had only 4 focus areas. We had some pretty narrow focus areas, so that got a lot of attention. And then it was like, man, we got all this stuff done in the recreation area. So, and I think that was a very successful 2-year term on that particular point, on that focus area. So, again, so I think that's, for me, those are the 4. And I think we're going to hit community services and improving staff function and all that, I think is kind of like a day-to-day thing that has to be done. And we might even have 1 or 2 ordinance changes, policy changes. We might have 20. I don't know. With between now and December of 26, we might have 20 policy changes that try to improve staff efficiency or whatever. We've been working for that for a long time. But these technological improvements in the infrastructure will also help with that. So I have some personal ideas about technology and what we can do that I think will help. I know that people up here definitely have a lot of ideas about that stuff. And then with respect to economic development, I think we have to be a good partner to the businesses. And one of the things we were working on is getting a full-time employee to help with that. So I think that's going to be amazing. And it might be perhaps that can be its own focus area in in 2 years when we have everything kind of cranking on that. But right now it's kind of like a developing item. So that's why I picked those 4, and I will now be quiet and see if we can come up with a 4 for everybody that everyone can agree on. And there was a lot of, I think by my count, I'm going to try to do this, but I think we had infrastructure and we all agreed on that. I think we had fiscal sustainability, but I might be wrong. Did we have that? Okay, so we had those 2. And then I think we had community development almost universally, but then some people had added the services, which I drew the line on that just because I thought it's a little too broad. But that I think that was like a community development, I think got a check mark, I think. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
I say community development.
And then, so then environmental stewardship, I think I had it. I think perhaps, did anyone not have environmental? Councilmember Garfield?
Dealing with the issue of, it seems to go across everything and it's so important, but I also recognize that it sends a message if we don't have it as a goal. And so from what I'm hearing you saying, it looks like, just want to see if I heard you correctly.
Okay.
That the issue of community services to improve quality of life, improve the quality of the services we render to the public is an operational issue and is something that we know we can trust the city manager to address, process improvement, things like that. And it's not necessarily a call out as a specific focus area, but rather some gains we'll get from technology, better staffing, things like that.
That's well said.
That's what you said. So with that in mind, it does seem like fiscal sustainability, infrastructure, community development, and environmental stewardship are the 4 that I've heard people talking about. And then we'll give our own take on it when we write our goals.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. And anyone wishing to comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just hearing some of the council conversation, infrastructure obviously seems to be almost the number 1, but I would suggest that you may want to think about the city's organizational development as a infrastructure point too. It's almost as important as you're focusing on asset and facilities. I think you could fit that in as an infrastructure item. I also think it's just a comment on my part. Community development is pretty broad, but you may also be able to fit economic development within that parameter. Just making some suggestions. And then, of course, environmental stewardship seems to be something that's the top of everybody's list.
Okay, thank you. So is everyone okay with infrastructure 1? And that's tech, physical, and city organization. Fiscal sustainability, which explains itself. Environmental stewardship and community development, but taking a broad brush on that in relation to what could be done. How's that sound to everybody?
I like it.
Okay, should we we got to get a vote on that. It says we need a vote, I believe.
I think if you can get consensus, I think that's as close as we need to go for the time being. And then we can just move along to the goal setting part of this.
Okay, I think we're good. Councilmember Padilla, you have any further comment? Or are we good?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Good, Joe? Yeah. All right. Excellent. Well, there's your direction for the evening. Unless you have any questions, Matt?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor, but I think we want to give you a bit of a homework assignment for the next week.
Okay.
Hate to give to you at this late hour. You've done a great job tonight. I want to say the council and the mayor, you've got through a heavy agenda and you've really stayed on track. If I can make one comment though, because you were talking about something I think Councilmember Garfield made a great point that fiscal sustainability is not always just cost control. It's also going to be revenue development. If all of our goals center on spending money, we also need to balance that. So that's something as you think about your goals to consider options where we generate revenue as well as spend it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could suggest the city clerk put up the Word document again. The second half of that is actually the assignment, and just take a few minutes to go over that.
Wait, what's the, we're gonna. Oh, yeah, we're coming back. Bob, you want us to take some?
Yes, yeah. Actually, Sandra, if you can put that Word document back up again.
Coming.
It's coming. Here we go. We have it here.
So the next step in this is actually you've established the focus area, and my next this is just an example that I crafted. Let's say that you had chosen economic development as your focus area. You would then want to support that with drafting a value statement. And in this case, I chose Pacific Grove supports the development of a business-friendly environment. And then following that would be a couple of goals to implement that. So essentially, what I'm looking for is the council to take each of these focus areas, develop a value statement, draft value statement, if you will, and then follow that with the actual goal development, and to implement both the value statement and the focus area. And these would be drafted up for each of the focus areas and submitted to the city manager by Wednesday of next week, which is the 12th. We would in turn, between Matt and myself, review the submittals to make sure they're not repetitive. And we would then come up with a recommended set of value statements and goals based on council submittal. There was a question about implementing basically milestone projects. And what I'm going to say is, I think if you develop the framework for the work plan, that then in turn provides the direction to staff for budget development. And that's where the really proofing comes in. They will, as a part of the budget process, come back and say to you, we can implement these milestone projects to accomplish your goal, or we can't because it'll exceed our capacity, and that will just give the council the final truth in the pudding, so to speak, in terms of the process. So what I'm asking you to do is to develop draft value statements and goal statements for each of your focus areas.
Okay.
And again, those focus areas include infrastructure, which includes technology and organization, fiscal sustainability, the broad brush of community of development, which includes economic development as well, and then the continuation of environmental stewardship.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pratt and I can work on giving you, like, sending you an email with that in it.
Yeah.
So you can respond.
That'd be great. Let's go ahead and close it out for the night, and tell us how many goals you want for each session or
Yeah,
section.
I would do no more than 2.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Garfield.
So what I hear you saying is that the best role of staff, and to Mayor Pro Tem Emilio's point, we don't want to overburden staff. We want them to be successful. So that the way that staff will be involved in this is as they build the budget,
they will either say, yes, we can do it this way, or they will say, can't do it. And that gives us the feedback we need.
Right, correct.
Correct. Now, can somebody please, just in looking forward, how are we best, what's the best way we're going to see ourselves forward to involve our boards and commissions?
And as I understand it, the boards and commissions have been invited to at least provide input. Is that correct, Matt?
Mr. Peralta, tomorrow afternoon, the Economic Development Commission meets, so we'll get their feedback. I'm waiting on the library board met last night, so I'm waiting on their feedback. Once I have that, I'm going to send that to the full council, so you'll have all of the boards and commissions top 2 or 3 that they recommended for you to consider.
I'm actually looking forward beyond that so that when we have a work plan that's built out of the budget, how do we involve boards and commissions appropriately in the work plans for public comment and input? And I know that's down the road some, but I still want to, is that not for tonight?
Big vote for
Okay.
tonight, I think.
Let me just rephrase that. I think we need to have a clearer idea of how that goes.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can answer that a bit, I think it's my suggestion that once the council has reviewed the framework will go out for public review through survey in a survey fashion and comment. And so that will ensure that the public has an opportunity to comment. And I think we can do the same thing with passing that framework along to the boards and commissions. The hope of all of this is to get this done by April so that you can give the direction to staff for the budget development.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you for keeping us on track there. It's getting a little late, so, I think probably want to close it out.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further, anything else? Okay. Thank you so much for staying with us this long. If you're still here, you're a diehard. We love it. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, wow.